Hey brothers, imagine this. You are a top hooligan with such a terrifying look that even the Yakuza start to sweat. Our guy Monite Zero just wants a little peace, but everyone thinks he's a beast. His reaction is like lightning, no delay. As soon as someone starts being rude or teasing, he responds instantly. Back off, Zero sharply cut off the trash. Mobsh is tired of these rumors. He tells them to stop looking, so scared, hasn't even done anything. They say he's a real beast, knocking down an entire gang with one kick. Suddenly some rascal runs out onto the road right under the wheels of a huge truck. Zero doesn't even think, just pushes the boy off the road. He realizes too late it's about to be hit. The truck looms right over him, and he knows it's the end for him. In his last moments, his whole life flashed before his Isa life in which everyone feared him. He wakes up in the library, and on his badino scratches at all. Suddenly a boy in glasses appeared and asked, "Is there a client here?" Zero asks, "Hey, where is this place?" And that man replies, "This is the memory document section. Our boy got lost just a second ago. He was saving a child." The boy in glasses reads his file and sadly confirms that he was run over by a truck. He directly tells Zero, "You are really dead." And Zero suddenly realizes this is literally the world after life. He is surprisingly calm in this whole situation. The librarian is shocked. He accepted his death with the energy of a speedrunner. Zero thought that his life made no sense anyway, because everyone hated him. The guide takes out a crystal ball and shows it to him to prove that people really did care. His little sister sobs uncontrollably and shouts, "Oni-chan." Zero does not believe what is happening right before him. The guide quietly explains to him, people did not actually hate him, they were just scared. Now that he has learned the truth, he asks what will happen next. The boy offers him a second chance at reincarnation. He cannot return home, but he can set off to a completely new world. The librarian says he will use his special power to give him a head start. He throws the dice. The fate of Zero in the next life depends on them. It is decided he will go to a world where spirits live and magic rules. In this world, everything works by a special rule. The closer your connection to nature, the more powerful you become. His new passive skill is the man loved by spirits, and it makes him as charismatic as possible in the eyes of magical beings. The librarian waved goodbye, and at that very moment revealed his true identity. He indifferently says, "I am a god," just at the moment when Zero disappears. Leaving the library, Zero shouts into the dark void, "Stupid four eyes." He wakes up under the wide, open sky in the middle of a lush forest. At first, something starts crawling on him. He screams for that bug to get off. He stops, looks at the huge mountains, and suddenly realizes he is no longer in Japan. He recalls the conversation about reincarnation and falling into a pit. Something bites him from behind. He prepares for battle. He grabs the tiny creature and sees it trembling with fear. A small humanoid, a stone, sits on its head. And he asks, "Who are you? Can you talk to that little unit?" Zero closes his eyes so the baby won't be scared by his intense gaze. And then, during this, he suddenly understands he is completely blind. Suddenly, a whole crowd of these tiny spirits appears in the thicket. They begin to multiply and instantly surround him. The entire forest floor is covered with these tiny spirits. They began to glow and treat him incredibly friendly. Regarding him, Zero considers them insanely cute and accepts his new life with them. Our guy Minai Zero, after the classic incident with the truck hunt, ended up in another world. He was sent there by a god in glasses. For 5 days now, he has been hanging out in a cave with a bunch of spirits, which he himself calls Chibis. Life is calm, but in the morning his little friends are a complete storm of energy. He goes outside to enjoy the weather and feels as if he is literally in paradise. He decides to take the Chibis fishing so the fun doesn't end. It seems everything is calm, but our guy suddenly realizes he is actually living in a tutorial zone. Chibis cannot speak, so they start drawing little houses on the ground to communicate. Zero realizes he wants to head to the town, and although he likes his cave, he agrees to take a look there. They have been walking for some time, and the initial excitement about this new world begins to fade. Finally, he stumbles upon a stone road and suddenly realizes how much he has actually missed modern asphalt. Suddenly, a scream cuts through the air. For the first time in 5 days, he notices a human girl. He tries to greet her with a friendly smile, but his Yankee face is a real nightmare. The poor girl is so frightened that she offers him all her money just to save her life. He hasn't even had time to explain that he is good when a pack of goblins flies in and ruins the whole atmosphere. Zero doesn't even break a sweat as he launches a huge kick. He decisively tells the monsters to stop pretending to be asleep and prepares to send them to hell. The girl watches in horror as he prepares to wipe out the world of trash mobs. After Zero dealt with the enemies, he suddenly notices the girl has fainted from unbearable pressure. He tries to start a fire while she is unconscious, but he has absolutely no survival skills. When the girl finally wakes up, she sees spirits and begins to lose her mind. She thinks she has been kidnapped and begs Zero not to sell her. She begins to panic because she fears that her first time will be with a scary hooligan, not with a prince. Zero's patience finally snapped. He yells at her to just shut up already. He says that he saved her life and just wants to start a fire. He asks her for a lighter, and she looks at him as if a burly fool is standing before her. She so easily set the log on fire with magic that Zero was simply frozen with surprise. "Magic, what is that?" he asks, thereby admitting that he knows nothing about it at all. The girl Grace cannot believe that someone doesn't know the basics of this world. She begins to mutter under her breath, convinced that our guy remembers absolutely nothing. Zero explains that in his old world, no one could use magic at all. Grace took pity on him and decided to explain that magic is simply the transformation of mana into elements. She says that everyone can do it, so Zero boldly shouts, "Fire, disappear," to extinguish the campfire. Nothing happened, and as a result, he only looked like a clown in front of his new friend. Grace is confused. Usually, so much magic should have done something. Zero lights up before the second attempt and looks so scary that Grace almost loses consciousness again. Eventually, he gives up, pretending to be calm, although magically he is clearly weakened. He asks her why she is here at all, and she explains that she wanted to sign a contract with a spirit. She is convinced that he has lost his memory because he started talking again with his invisible Chibai friends. She explains that spirits are tiny elemental creatures that people usually do not see. Zero instantly feels he has a hidden perk of sea spirits because a huge swarm is swirling around her. Grace with burning eyes explains that signing a contract makes a magician many times stronger. If you get 3 or more, you are already considered a powerful force at the national level. Zero says that she is a child because she wanders here without any plan and has no idea how to find them. Regarding her, she admits that she just fell for a rumor, and Zero considers it a trash strategy. He decides to act brotherly and offers to help her. He understood it is better to set off on a long journey together. The trip, Grace sighed with relief because being alone in the forest made her literally sweat. Finally, they exchanged names, and he simply called himself Zero. She calls herself Grace Aura, but says it a little shyly. She is really happy that she met someone who is not a monster at all, despite his face. She gives him a warm smile and firmly shakes his hand, sealing the agreement. But the moment of peace instantly shatters when Zero immediately mangles her name. He started calling her Gusu Aik and stubbornly refuses to write her name correctly. Despite quarrels, the new team sets their sights on Karato Town and sets off on the road. Zero reached the checkpoint, but the guards immediately got scared when they saw his frightening face. Gutsu has to intervene and explain that her companion is actually not a demon from the abyss. As soon as they pass through the gates, our guy finds himself surrounded by literally an army of cute spirits. Finally, they enter Karato Town, which looks like an ordinary starting town. Zero notices that everyone has crazy hair colors and asks if it's some strange local trend. Bo explains that hair color is connected to magic. For example, her red hair means she is a fire master. Zero desperately tries to directly force fire magic just by shouting, but probably because of his brown hair, he is destined to remain with earth magic. Usu sternly tells him to stop joking. His face is already scary enough. Suddenly, in the middle of the street, a real crowd of scoundrels begins to harass an old man. Before Gusu could even blink, Zero disappears nearby to handle the situation. He accidentally bumps into that burly fool to draw aggression onto himself. The guy tries to look cool, but Zero just delivers a fierce blow to his stomach. Seeing this giant taken down with one hit, his brother falls into complete panic. Zero throws them such a cursed look that they immediately apologize and run away at record speed. Guess who tries to reproach him for being too cruel, and Zero simply thinks he showed mercy. He even promises to deliver a real decisive blow next time, and that's not at all what she meant. And that old man turns out to be Uruji, the most legendary blacksmith of this town. To show gratitude, he told Zero to choose any equipment from his shop and take it for free. Zero pretends like everything is under control and refuses, but Gusu reminds him that his defense is a complete zero. Finally, he puts on a light breastplate. Looks like a worthy mid-game upgrade. When Eroji asks which legendary blade he wants, Zero simply asks for an iron pipe. Gusu, who starts to get nervous, because in the context of this world's goals, this is simply not a weapon. Zero fervently claims that nails driven into the pipe turn it into a top-tier weapon. Uruji actually loves chaotic energy and agrees to fulfill this unique request. While the old man forges in the smithy, Gusu sets off for supplies and food. Zero asks her to buy bandages, but why he remains silent for now. When left alone, Zero just hangs out with the local spirits, who seem to worship him. He begins to tap his fingers strangely, as if proving his friendship with every Chibai spirit in the room. Honestly, it's so touching to see a guy who looks like a final boss behave so calmly with the little ones. Finally, the manufacturing process is complete. Zero pulls out his new weapon and realizes with surprise, it is incredibly light for its size. Gutsu glanced and understood. The old man really made the pipe from mithril. This is not for a dumb stick, this is a reserve of the highest level materials for the equipment of holy knights. Zero spits on the lore and simply wraps bandages to get the perfect grip. He sincerely thanks the old man for the god-level trophies and prepares to set off. The two go to spend the night at the inn, but it becomes awkward when the host asks if one room will be enough for them. Gusu immediately starts sweating, and she insists on 2 separate rooms until everything becomes strange. She throws a tantrum because she is convinced that because Zero overslept, their schedule is completely ruined. She is sure if he had woken her earlier, they would already be in the spirit forest, not wasting time. Time passes and our guy loses patience, especially when she admits that she might only be guessing about the real route. Ultimately, the girl literally relies on pure RNG intuition to find the legendary place. She explains that the spirits make the environment like a masterpiece in high definition, crystal clear water and fertile soil. Zero suddenly realized that the Chibis he spent time with perfectly matched that description. She got completely lost, so he decides not to fall behind anymore and goes ahead himself. Gus immediately became wary. He was afraid that he was leading her into some suspicious, gloomy forest. But when Zero threatens to leave her behind, she finally decides to follow him. They reach Gyro's base, and it's just a gigantic forest, hidden from the whole world. He greets this place as if he just finished a long, exhausting grind, and finally returns to his save point. Gus was stunned. Magic flows from every tree here. She can't believe her eyes. This hidden zone really exists, although there is no evidence of it in any historical book. Our guy finally shockingly admits he is actually an Isekai protagonist from another world. Dusu thinks this explains his strange clothes and the fact that he doesn't understand magic at all. Zero gets a bit upset, wondering if his Chibai friends only like him because of some cheat skill. But Gusu gives him a rare victory, saying that friendship and skill are 2 completely different things. Tension rises as she sternly warns him to keep his gift of seeing spirits a secret. If advanced players find out about it, they will try to kidnap him to force contracts with spirits and raise their stats. This idea makes Zero completely transform into a beast. He promises to pin down anyone who dares to touch his Chibai brothers. Although Gus does not see them, she can tell they are very soulful by the atmosphere they create next to Zero. Gusu is sweating buckets because she still does not understand how to make a contract. After a week of failures, she is ready to delete her account out of pure depression and calls herself a loser. Zero sees a new entity and immediately rushes to help her finish the job. He even defends her, telling the spirit that beneath all that salt, Gusu is actually a good person. Zero suggests doing this to seal the friendship, and Gusu is instantly overwhelmed with panic. As it turned out, it was just a finger touch, a sign of friendship. Gusu finally put all the facts together. She could not make a contract because Zero accidentally took all the spirits in the area first. She sighed with relief, not some trash mob, but still blames Zero for all this confusion. Suddenly, the spirit really approaches her and offers a trade. Finally, Gusu's sight clears, and she sees the tiny spirit for the first time. The spirit is ready to make a contract, and Gusu literally soars with pure joy. Our guy smiles slyly, happy that she finally got her first big win. Even in her sleep, she mumbles that Zero seems to be to blame for everything. A few days after Gusu Aik made a deal with the fire spirit, the carriage was still shaking on the road to the capital. But the journey suddenly stalls when Gusu starts looking like she's about to throw up. Our guy won't tolerate this and scolds her for not saying earlier about her motion sickness. Lately, she has been suspicious hiding under a heavy cloak, even though the carriage is almost boiling with heat. Suddenly, something touched his danger instinct when he dragged her into the bushes. He forces her to keep her head down while they sweep the perimeter. Nearby, a pack of goblins is rummaging around it. Seems they are already ready to draw attention and launch an attack. Gusu steps forward and tries to use his spirit magic to deal with the threat. But the main hero does not wait for the spell gauge to fill. He rushes straight into the thick of the battle. The goblins notice him, but are too slow to react to his lightning speed. He lives by a single rule. In battle, the first to strike is the one who wins. He starts throwing these trash mobs around as if it's nothing. One goblin doubled over from a heavy kick right to the chest. He stands over the remaining monsters like a true raid boss. Clearing the field, he wipes the blood and bathes in adrenaline after the fight. He notices strange black ornaments falling from the corpses and thinks, could this be rare loot? Meanwhile, the stress proved too strong for Gusu, and she completely fainted. They decided to set up camp for the night the girl ran out of mana. The main character hands her the medicine that Chibai prepared to help her recover. He asks her to stay in place while he goes to gather firewood. With his words, he behaves like a huge fool, which makes her feel like a burden. She is completely broken and apologizes for being good for nothing. The atmosphere becomes incredibly awkward, and our guy realizes he has ruined the social link. She sits in silence and wonders why she even went on this adventure. Next to his strength, she feels like a complete NPC. Finally, the host grits his teeth, remembering how he wanted to become a better person in this new life. He lets out an irritated scream. It is hard for him to calmly express his feelings. Finally, he tells her, just vent and say everything you think. She looks at him with those big anime eyes and asks if he will really listen to her story. She suddenly confesses she has a sister, a true pro at everything. All she wants is for the family to recognize her as a true witch. Suddenly he realizes her past is like a mirror of his own former life. He remembers how he was a hooligan whom everyone was afraid to even try to understand. He tells her that seeking external approval from nasty people is a trap. He swears if anyone starts talking crap, he will personally beat them up. Finally, she smiled and thanked him for carrying her. Even the spirits root for her when she finally falls asleep. The next morning, the main character wakes up and sees on the plate something that looks like real poison. It turned out she tried to cook breakfast and it was a complete failure. He grumbles fiercely that her food has more deadly power than the monsters they fought. He dismissed it with a smilish, is simply naive and frivolous. Finally, they set course again and head to the capital of Alpha. Huge walls appear in the field of view. This is a real monster among fortresses. In front of the gates, there is a huge queue, and it is a complete nightmare for their pace. Gus decisively tells him to stop worrying about the inspection and just follow her. She pulls him forward, completely slipping through the queue. The guards immediately noticed and rushed towards them. The host thinks that he is about to be banned for breaking the rules. But instead of arresting them, the guards kneel and greet her as if at home. They call her Grey-sama, and it immediately becomes clear her true level is much higher than she pretended. Our guy's brain completely froze. He looks at her in shock, not believing with which VIP person he has been traveling all this time. Grace knows that they cannot just loiter near the castle gates, so she leads our guy inside to settle in. The guards instantly fall to their knees as soon as they see her face, and Zero remains completely bewildered. He tries to look smart and guesses that she is actually the daughter of some dishonest merchant. He even throws at her, "Go die in the fire," because he considers her just a spoiled, capricious girl. They approach this huge, highest-level castle, and Zero still can't put the puzzle together in his head. He literally asks if she is blackmailing the whole team just to somehow get inside. Suddenly, when Grace's older sister appears, a huge aura of pure energy, step on me, swirls around her. This cool girl is clearly the talented sister everyone talks about, and Grace is already literally drenched in sweat. The sister immediately rushes into attack, scolding Grace for trying to avoid meeting their father. Then she notices Zero and decides that he is too mediocre for her castle, so she orders the guards to throw him out. Our guy is now clearly furious. This lady calls him a hideous, disgusting sight. Zero will not let some royal arrogance humiliate him, so he tells her if she wants a fight, he is ready too. The sister froze from his rough swearing, but Grace finally finds the courage and intervenes. Then she declared that Zero is her friend and guest, and by that distracted aggro from him. When they were leaving, Zero couldn't hold back and threw in one more sharp remark. He tells his sister that she would look more formidable if her legs didn't tremble like a leaf. The sister is simply boiling with anger over this disrespect, but the group moves on. They were thrown into a room that looked like the account of a real whale. Grace finally dropped the truth bomb. It turns out she is the second princess of the Kingdom of Orphans. She is afraid that our guy will start acting strange or get angry at her for hiding the secret. Zero just looks at her with an empty gaze and asks, "So what?" He lightly taps her on the head to pull her out of panic. Like to him, she is just a friend, and he is not going to get down on one knee like some muscular fool. Grace sighed with relief, her friend is still wild, even if he calls her an idiot. At that very moment, Lily's personal maid appears, carrying a tray with a tea set. At first, she seems like a typical waifu introducing herself instantly, without any delay. Grace goes to change before the official audience with the king. The second blessing vanished, the air became poisonous, and Zero heard a loud click of a tongue. Lily instantly breaks the act, calls him a stinging insect, and tells him not to look at her. Zero realizes this maid is truly two-faced and mean, only sweet when the boss is watching. She tells him straight to his face, "Go die." Grace is not around to hear this venom. Zero simply goes crazy at how rudely this little brat behaves. But just when everything was about to explode, Grace returns in a formal dress, like a legendary pillar of tears. Lily instantly returns to the role of a flawless maid, pretending she herself became a victim of her own clumsiness. Grace fell for the bait and begs Zero to forgive the girl for the misunderstanding. While Grace smiles, Lily gives Zero the most self-satisfied expression in the world, one that makes you want to hit her. Zero is about to dash into a mad race for his life, but Grace begs him to calm down. Finally, they reach the huge doors of the throne room to meet the big boss. Grace forced him to promise to keep himself in check and not say anything unnecessary in front of her father. Zero throws her a "trust me, bro" look when the doors finally swung open. Finally, Grace returns to the palace and stands before her father, the king. Our guy Zero just stands with his squad of spirits, looking completely indifferent to all this royal charm. The king's daughter, Amaris, immediately behaves like a true cheeky young lady, demanding that Zero kneel before her father. Grace seems about to lose her mind, and the spirits literally tremble in their boots. Zero understands that for now he has to play by their rules, so he finally drops to one knee to keep the peace. Amaris keeps grumbling about some commoner entering the palace, but the king coldly puts her in her place, calling Zero a guest. Inside, Zero boils with rage, thinking that the nickname Kuswama, or simply bitch, perfectly suits this poisonous sister. The king breathed down her neck, pressing with words, "Do you understand the consequences of your sudden disappearance?" Grace tried to be magnanimous and sincerely apologized. But the king doesn't care about her feelings. He coldly asks what she really gained from this selfish journey. Grace clings to words, trying to explain herself under the pressure of the throne room. Finally, she exclaimed, excitedly announcing that she had managed to sign a contract with the spirit. Amaris even tries to stand up for her, hoping that this will finally make the king accept Grace, but the king simply exploded, calling her a fool and ordering her to know her place. He stubbornly insists that the real reason she couldn't sign the contract before is her immaturity, completely ignoring her huge victory. The king orders her to disappear from his sight, and when Amaris tries to protest, he immediately silences her. Grace looks completely broken with a depressed expression. She agrees to go think alone in her room. She tries to appear calm and tells Zero that she will prepare a room for him. But our guy can't calm down at all when he sees his friends being treated like trash moms. He pats her on the head and says that staying silent is simply impossible for him. Zero turns against the king and Amaris and orders Kusawami to shut up. He shouts that she should be praised for surviving a dangerous journey to become an adult. The king looks offended. The peasant contradicts and asks how stupid Zero really is. Zero does not back down, asking the king if he really thinks she was just chasing quick success. He directly calls the king an idiot for treating his own daughter like a pimple. The king finally loses his temper and orders the guards to seize this insolent boy. Zero just smirked and said to him, "Attack me," ready to take on the aggression of the entire castle. He is ready to twist the guards and even that lousy sister if necessary. He looked at Grace and pressed, "Say something right now before the chance disappears," and Zero reminds her she left home because she couldn't stand everyone looking down on her. Grace finally intervenes, but instead of fighting, she apologizes, saying the stumble was her fault. She tells her sister to be quiet, proudly asserting that it is her business. She, as a member of the royal family, will handle it. Grace admits she was reckless, but then throws her father a quiet smile. There she confesses that although Zero speaks harshly, hearing someone express feelings aloud was like a breath of fresh air. Zero keeps taking the blame and shouts that he did everything himself to protect her. The king, realizing that they both act on their own, finally orders Zero to be taken to the guest room. Later that night, Zero rests in his room and wonders if the law will soon ease up on him. A maid brings him food, but coldly says she wishes he were executed. And she begins hurling insults, calling him a lousy bug for betraying Grace. She explains that because of his stunt, Grace could really lose her right to the throne. The maid warns him. Rumors are already spreading saying Grace has fallen by bringing someone like him into her life. Zero suddenly becomes self-aware and admits he sounds like a lousy scoundrel. He tells the maid that he simply could not accept that Grace was not allowed to receive praise from her own family. The maid calls him an idiot for making enemies of everyone, but Zero says he won't change for anyone. Just as she walks away, she quietly thanks him, and our guy is left completely confused. Zero tries to clear his thoughts by looking out the window while his squad of spirits wanders nearby. He decides he must find Grace to talk about their next move, but the castle turns out to be just a giant. In the middle of the night, he gets completely lost in the corridors. Stumbling by accident, he ends up right under Amari's door and hears her angrily scolding inside. He peeks through the door, expecting a fight, but sees something much stranger. Turns out the older sister was actually afraid of his terrible eyes and, left alone, started crying. Zero is shocked. He didn't even suspect she had been literally sweating all this time. But then everything gets weird when he sees her pulling out her younger sister's doll. She hugs the doll to herself and keeps thinking about how much she loves Grace. Zero realizes he just got involved in a huge sister complex, and this is very bad. He whispers to his spirits to immediately erase this memory from their brains. But suddenly Grace appears behind him and asks in surprise what he is doing under her sister's door. Zero is panicked to the ears, pretending as if he is just returning to his room. Grace apologizes for disturbing her sister and says she is leaving. Zero feels a chill in his chest. If he goes back now, that crazy sister inside will definitely kill him. Zero suddenly realizes he has stepped on a huge mine when the princess's older sister corners him. Gosu Yuyaki tries to simply disappear before the situation turns into chaos. But the sister doesn't let anyone go until she exchanges a few words. Grace really thinks Zero is trying to impress her brother or sister, but that's the last thing on his mind. Our guy tries to break free as soon as she steps away. Unfortunately, the sister does not hesitate at all and drags him straight into her private room. The air becomes oppressive as she pours a cup of tea laced with pure poison. She looks at him challengingly and asks if he has seen her humiliating moment before. Suddenly, a dagger whistles past his head like a warning shot. And then Zero finally loses his composure and starts barking back at her. She is convinced that he is some second-rate player trying to blackmail her. He immediately rejects this, assuring that he is not a coward. The sister insists that she just wants to be a good sister, so she becomes a guardian. Zero dropped a truth bomb on her, calling her a complete siskin. He thundered for her to quiet down and listen to his veteran advice. If she continues to be such a huge fool, Gusuaki will eventually start to hate her forever. The sister feels that the distance between them is truly growing. Zero starts slipping her lines from the book he read to manipulate the situation. He proposes a plan to become a bridge between them so they can finally be honest with each other. She throws herself headlong into her best friend's plan. Just as he thinks he has broken free, she grabs him again to remind him what's at stake. She swears to lay flowers on his grave if he reveals her secret. Zero stands his ground and promises to help them get closer. He sincerely smiles at her and admits that he has already given up on his sister, who stayed at home. It really makes the villain blush for a second as he leaves. And later that night, he finds Grace sitting, relaxed on the balcony. He accidentally sneaks up from behind and scares her to death. They sit quietly next to each other and admire the stars together. Grace sincerely thanks him. He helped her feel renewed. She confesses her deepest desire, for her father to finally recognize her as royal. She wants to be a leader whom people truly trust. Even if she is expelled, she is determined not to bow her head. Zero feels responsible for the mess he caused. Grace jokingly asks if he will take care of her if she gets kicked out. Zero takes it seriously and promises to find her a job and a roof over her head. The thought that she will no longer be with Zero painfully struck her. Our guy thoughtfully recalls that in his past life, he always played alone. He sincerely rejoices when he sees that someone really wants to stay close. Grace sharply pulls him out of his inner monologue with one quick pinch. She suggests they set off on a journey together. They will travel the world until Zero finds his calling. Seeing her smile like that, Zero realizes how incredible she is. He thinks and smiles to get into this world and meet these chibis, and that completely satisfied him. Making new friends along the way isn't that a pleasant hassle. But first, they will have to deal with the king sitting on the throne. The king started talking about yesterday's chaos. He demands to see proof that Grace can really make deals with spirits. To resolve the matter, he suddenly gives them a task. Zero has been stuck in this new world for 2 months now. He is now riding in the royal carriage, which is so pompous that it is uncomfortable. Our guy knows to any potential enemy, they stand out like a stranger in a crowd. But Amari's is a complete idiot who believes their authority will make them invulnerable. Life Grace is so naive, she thinks there isn't a single rebel in the whole country. Zero is already sweating because he knows this trip is a complete disaster. All this trouble started back at the castle when the king decided to test Grace's power. Since she made a contract with a spirit, they need to make sure she can really handle her part. The task is simple: find the lizard folk nest near the village in the east and exterminate them. Amari's joined, but since they set up camp, she has been a constant headache. While Zero does all the hard work, she just stands and complains like a real bitch. Even the maid is a real disaster. She literally digs at Zero while he lies down. She pulls him aside for a private conversation to lay out important backstory. It seems there is a faction that fiercely hates the royal family and wants it gone. She sternly warns him the real threat is not from outside, but inside the kingdom itself. Zero suddenly realized this brilliant carriage is actually a huge target on their backs. If they want to reach the village alive, they need real, serious camouflage. Zero firmly told the group, "Leave the carriage situation to me." While the girls fuss over preparing food, he plays his secret trump cards. These chibai are incredibly useful and immediately get to work. The next morning, the maid is simply stunned by what she sees. The bright royal carriage was completely transformed into an ordinary cart overnight. This is a crazy speedrun of repairs that should not have been physically possible at all. Finally, they arrived at the village to inspect the area. The elder finally confirmed the lizard folk made a nest in a cave about an hour's walk away. Zero wants to learn even more, but Amaris stops him on the spot. She presses her status and insists that she should lead because she has more experience. The mage quickly stops this, reminding everyone that this is Grace's quest. Finally, they reach the cave and notice a lit bonfire near the entrance. The group tries to be inconspicuous, quietly counting their number. But Amaris is completely restless. She instantly stands up right before everyone's eyes. She says that the one who strikes first will win, simply the dumbest logic in the world. Zero literally loses his mind and yells at her to use her brain at least once. She has a perfect plan. She will take on 5 monsters, and the rest of the squad will deal with the other 4. Zero is really worried about RNG having such a muscular fool on the team. He understands that these girls don't see chibai at all, and communication becomes a real nightmare. He decides that they need to retreat to the village to finally turn on their brains. Amaris pretends to be cool and boldly asks why she should listen to him. Zero turns around and gives her a look that would destroy the final boss. His aura is so terrifying that the whole group immediately folded and agreed to retreat. The team needs to get their builds together before everything turns into chaos. Usaku starts the game, admitting that she has a contract with only one spirit, which enhances her fire magic. And also Lily, a maid who skillfully wields ice magic and has her own spirit partner. She is clearly top-tier support, showing ice control without any delay. But she has a nasty streak. She accidentally hit our guy from afar with an ice shard. She pretends to be a complete fool, as if her hand just slipped. Then the Princess Knight Amaku starts bragging about her legendary gear. Dressed from head to toe in pure mithril, and believes that only she has meta-level equipment. Outside, our guy is unimpressed, and shows that his seemingly simple iron pipe is actually made of first-class mithril too. She decides to call his bluff, taps the pipe to see if it will break. But the quality is so cracked that her own gear looks like starter loot. She instantly breaks out in sweat and accuses him of theft. Grace has to intervene and defend him before the team's relationships completely fall apart. While they argue, our guy is actually playing 4D chess with his invisible chibis. He sent them on reconnaissance because only he can see these tiny, sturdy creatures. He knows making the first move is the only chance to complete this quest in record time. He drops the info. 15 lizardmen are waiting in the straight tunnel. The maid felt something was wrong and sharply demanded where he got this information. Grace panics and claims that it is his skill to keep his secrets safe. She tells them that God seemingly gave him a cheat code for gathering information. The servant thinks she is just a fool, but for now agrees with the explanation. Our guy gets a little touched and sincerely says he doesn't want anyone on the team to suffer defeat. He calls the girls cute nicknames, and the burly knight and the maid simply lose their heads. Grace feels left out of the nickname club and throws a tantrum. He gently pats her on the head to calm her down, and for her heart, it is like a critical hit. He thanks her for the help, which completely confuses her. But the sweet moment instantly disappears as soon as he calls them stupid sisters. Finally, they reach the enemy's appearance point and notice lizard people guarding the cave entrance. Imagine, the girls actually fell asleep while waiting, a complete failure for beginners. Our guy wakes them without a drop of calm. The raid is about to start. The Chubaises confirm the trash mobs are finally dozing. The plan is this: flood the entrance and use the water so their magic hits harder. Amaku is supposed to drop a lightning nuclear bomb on that puddle to paralyze everyone. But our guy is thrilled, thinks this strategy is pure perfection. The princess actually turns on her brain and suggests building an ice wall to drive the enemies into the death zone. Our guy is really shocked. She came up with something decent. The maid finished the preparation, and the aura around the group suddenly became tense. They fell silent, staring into the dark abyss of the cave, waiting for the first hint of movement. The trap is already in place. Our guy is ready to get into the fight. It's time to find out whether this teamwork really works, or if it's just a disaster about to happen. Grace tightens her weapon, ready to prove that she is not just a mascot. Our guy starts banging a frying pan to take aggro from the darkness. The plan works instantly. A scaly monster emerges from the thickets. A whole squad of lizard men rushes to their position, not a moment of peace. Gosak completely loses composure and lets out a frightened scream. She, overwhelmed by panic, unleashes a colossal wave of black lightning that caught even our guy by surprise. Magic is pure chaos, and the main hero throws himself into the thick of it to prevent the complete annihilation of the entire group. By some miracle, he deflects the wild magic, and the girls just stand stunned. How does he even have such a body? While the lizard men are still advancing, Grace decides that finally her time to carry has come. She shouts that monsters are best made crispy while charging a powerful spell. Our guy tries to persuade her to slow down a bit, but she is already in full glass cannon mode. A colossal flash blinds the whole group as the lightning wipes out everything in its path. When the smoke cleared, it was visible that Grace had actually rushed through the entire skirmish. All lizard folk in this area turned into coal. Grace looks incredibly confident, but our guy is boiling with rage because she almost destroyed the entire cave. He starts counting bodies and suddenly realizes that the random number generator malfunctioned. Suddenly, a survivor jumps out of the shadows and launches a treacherous attack. Before the main hero could react, Gyusaku sharply pushed him out of the danger zone. The blow threw her back into the darkness of the cave. Our guy lets out a roar, realizing that the kid just took the hit instead of him. He doesn't even wait for a plan, just tears straight into the cave like a real tank. Deep down, Gyusaku again remembers how much she wanted her father to praise her. The main hero is completely out of himself, calls himself a fool, and his rage reaches its peak. He looks down on the lizard folk and mocks his pathetic accuracy. He went into full berserk, says he doesn't even feel pain. He approaches closer and instantly twists the lizardman. He stands over the mangled remains like a living nightmare. Grace catches up and prepares to finish it off with another powerful spell. She shouts "Die" and throws another nuclear bomb into the cramped room. The main hero barely manages to take cover from his own fire. Lily stands at the threshold, holding her breath, and prays that the whole mountain does not collapse. Grace joyfully celebrates her one-hit kill, while the main hero literally coughs up dust. He yells at her, calling her a big fool, and accusing her of almost causing the cave collapse. The ceiling immediately cracked, proving him right. Mid falling stones, he noticed a strange glowing egg on the ground. He scoops up the loot in his hands and Grace shouts to him, "Just run." They barely escaped the tunnel. As soon as they exited, the entrance collapsed. Grace tries to pretend that it's a trifle, but MC is just glad they weren't buried. He looks back to glance at Gasuka, but she stands pale as if she saw a ghost. She stares intently at their hands, and a terrifying aura hovers around her. It turns out the main character and Grace are still holding hands after that escape. Gasuka becomes a true yandere and demands to know why they feel so comfortable next to each other. Panic immediately grips Grace, and she tries her best to explain what happened. Gasuko bursts into a huge hysterics because she hasn't even held anyone's hand yet. But while the girls argue, the tiny spirits just watch, feeling relieved that the chaos has finally subsided. Grace is covered with severe burns from that fireball, but overall she is okay. She uses fire magic, so she is naturally protected from being boiled alive. She sees that Zero is bleeding, asks if he staggered, but he is only worried about her. Our guy gently stroked her head to calm her down, a true pro-gamer move. The mood instantly changes when Zero pulls out a mysterious black egg that he took from the lizard. Emiku loses self-control and slaps him right across the face. She is all wet with sweat, anxiously asking if he feels any strange discomfort or malaise. She sharply draws her sword and demands fiercely to know if he has any connections with the Spirit Liberation Squad. Zero is simply puzzled. These Chibai are so relaxed that they don't need any liberation at all. Amaku is ready to erase him. It all depends on what he says next. Zero stands firm and makes it clear. He is not an enemy and does not belong to any strange cult. He notes that if he wanted to harm them, he would have finished the job and fled long ago. Grace instantly rushed to defend him, reminding her sister that he is a complete novice here. Zero begins to feel the pressure. His hands are sweating wildly. Amaku sharply tells him, "Stop babbling nonsense." Our guy suddenly realizes he is actually terribly afraid that the group will hate him. He recalls his past life and how he always pretended to be cool to hide his true feelings. Zero laughs, easing the tension, and the girls understand that the stone in his hands is a danger of the highest level. He explains that he has just begun to figure out how this world works. And then he drops a nuclear bomb. "I am from another world." Amaku instantly delivers another blow to his face. She considers him a pathetic liar and promises to properly interrogate him in the dungeon. Finally, Grace reaches her limit and stands right between their weapons. Both are furious and shout at her to step away from the splash zone. Grace shouts that she will start to hate them both if they do not stop fighting right now. The threat hits harder than the final boss's strike and forces them both to sheathe their swords. Grace says she sincerely believes Zero because when they met, he knew absolutely nothing about magic. She says, although his eyes are frightening, he did not try to cheat for rewards. She even mockingly teased him, saying that Zero-san is not really that skilled. Even the Chibis have already started mocking Zero. Amiko finally agrees to a temporary truce for the sake of her sister. They made a campfire to talk about the true legends of this world. It seems the Spirit Liberation Squad is convinced. Spirits are higher forms of life, and people should not keep them under control. Zero gazes at the black stone, pondering how it fits into the goal. Amaku explains that the stone is a cursed object that drains the magical power of whoever holds it. Grace asks, what does this debuff actually do to a person's body? In the worst case, the victim falls into a coma and never wakes up again. Amaris tells the girls to lightly tap it to see the effect for themselves. Just a light touch, and they seem to feel the charge being sucked out of their internal batteries. And then Zero simply lifts the whole thing and feels absolutely nothing. They realize this item probably only gives random effects to those born in this world. Grace begins to form a wild guess about our guy in her head. Without looking away, she asks Zero if he really cannot do magic at all. Amaku goes crazy because this should be a mechanical impossibility. Zero tells her to shut up so Grace can get to the point. At the end of the session, Grace drops a real bombshell. It's not that he was nerfed or that he just casts poorly. Our guy literally has zero magical power in his entire body. Amaris can't believe her ears when Zero admits that he has zero magical attributes. In his world, no one does magic, so it's like he's playing a completely different game. She starts to panic because she can't understand how someone survives without mana. Zero just throws logic in her face. He has flasks of water and a fire striker, so he doesn't worry at all. He brushes off the lack with laughter, but Amaris loses patience and with one blow lays him down for being so frivolous. Our guy complains about friendly fire as they make their way past huge cliffs. Zero presses Amaris about the political context, asking about the rebels she mentioned earlier. Finally, she leaks confidential information. It turns out she is actually the deputy captain of the Royal Knights. Zero realizes that she is not just another fool. Meanwhile, Lily asks how much the rebellion is intensifying. Amaris explains that the Spirit Liberation Squad is rapidly gaining supporters. People are simply tired of the royal family. Zero notices a pattern and suddenly understands. Monsters usually do not go out specifically to hunt humans. Usually these minor enemies attack only if you step onto their territory. But lately they have been striking lightning fast at real human villages. Zero pulls out a black stone and wonders if it is the source of this cursed malfunction. Amaris is confused. There is no mention that monsters carried these stones that drain mana. It is a complete mystery why monsters do not weaken at all from the presence of that stone. Grace intervened, remembering how that stone, as soon as she touched it, tried to suck everything dry from her. And Zero asks the spirits for knowledge, but they look frightened and refuse to speak. Finding no more clues, the squad decides to complete the mission and return to the village. They arrive at the village and discover the air here is often completely shrouded in fog. Grace thinks this is a celebration for her, but Zero reminds her that she is a big fool and orders everyone to duck down. From the bushes, they noticed a group in Hood's villains looking for princesses. Amaris confirms that these guys are from the Spirit Liberation Squad. It dawned on them, the rebels are hunting specifically for Amaris and Grace. It turned out their ostentatious carriage was like a beacon for the enemy. Lily and Amaris are already ready to deliver a deadly blow, but Zero tells them to wait. He exploded at them, shouting that they want to rush forward without checking where the enemy is. Zero tells them that delivering the first strike is his job, and they need to stay in the shadows. He uses the fog to his advantage and asks Lily if the carriage is ready for a quick departure. Lily is exhausted, but still agrees to take the wheel of the car for the escape. Zero cast a creepy look at the girls and ordered them to keep complete silence. The princesses tremble with fear, crouching in the hiding place. As they approach the entrance to the village, the guards block their way. Lily whispered to Zero, "Hide the girls under the cloth, I will take the conversation myself." The guards immediately stop the carriage. They insistently demand to know why someone is leaving so early. Lily looks around and asks her master for advice. Zero is puzzled by the name change, and Lily eagerly immerses herself in the role. The guards see Zero's creepy face and think that a real ogre is in front of them. Lily apologizes. She says her master is a real fiery giant. She cleverly tells a fable about visiting hot springs and returning to their estate. She constantly mocks Zero's character to sell this lie, while Zero fumes with rage in the corner. The guards wave their hands, they don't want trouble, so they let the carriage pass. Lily smiles slyly, the plan worked perfectly, although inside Zero is dying. The girls start giggling at the master's joke as the carriage rolls away. Zero's blood pressure rises to record heights. Amaris and Grace don't calm down, they mock him, celebrating their successful escape. Our guy just wants to return to the capital before he loses his mind. The squad rushes into the distance, successfully slipping past the rebel blockade. Amaris eagerly questions the group. She still can't understand why the rebels are hunting them. The mention of a possible conspiracy completely caught Zero and Grace by surprise. Amaris pours out the harsh truth. Without the spirits, the country simply won't be able to survive. If the sisters are captured, the rebels will hold them as a bargaining chip to secure the spirits' release. As for him, Grace is clearly frightened at the very thought that she might be taken hostage. She orders Lily to hurry. Her father must be informed about this mess immediately. Zero understands this is becoming much more complicated than a simple escort mission. When they approach the castle, they are greeted by a huge, burly man. This burly guy without a golem is clearly delighted. He is happy to see Amaris again. Amaris proudly introduces him, captain of the knightly order. Golemless had already heard rumors about some swearer who brazenly contradicted the king. He laughs like a maniac and, friendly slapping him on the back, almost folds Zero 5 in half. Zero is not going to tolerate it. He calls that guy a bloody old man right to his face. Grace breaks out in a cold sweat because you don't just talk to the captain of the knights like that. Golemless was genuinely impressed by Zero's lack of fear and offered him a place in the order, but Zero immediately brushed it off, saying he was not interested at all in joining such a strict and ossified group. The squad, just after Zero left, Amaris becomes serious and informs the captain that they encountered a squad of rebels in the village. This confirms their information has leaked. This is a huge warning for the kingdom's security. They rushed straight to the throne room to see the king. Amaris is annoyed that Zero came to the royal audience just like that, as if for company. The king sharply interrupts her and tells Grace that it is time for her official report. Grace takes a deep breath and prepares to lay out everything that happened. She says confidently, the lizard folk nest in the east has been completely destroyed. But there is one hitch. She mentions a mysterious black stone found near the monster's body. Amara steps forward and passionately explains how the rebels specifically hunted the princesses. The king looks as if he is about to lose his mind because of this alarming news. He decisively orders Grace, bring a full written report as soon as possible. Then he asks Amaris to help his sister while they prepare a room for the guest. Zero is already truly angry. The king behaves like a cold NPC, not like a father. Just before leaving, the king finally softened and said to Grace, "You did well." Grace looks as if she just pulled a 5-star character. She is simply ecstatic. Zero smirks, glad to see that the old man finally showed at least a drop of human emotion. While matters were being wrapped up in the castle, Zero stood watching as the sisters set off to handle their royal affairs. It struck him, both Grace and Amaris are sweating over the future of their people. Their crown is not an ornament. Real duties lie upon them, which cannot be cast off lightly. Zero stands in the corridor, completely lost in his thoughts. He begins to doubt his own path in this world. What should I do, he thinks, feeling the full weight of the situation. Lily watches him walk away and feels, our guy is going through a serious internal crisis. Zero is stuck in his own thoughts, hesitating whether to keep wandering from place to place. He knows that he cannot run away forever, but accepting it is very difficult for him. Dusuku sharply brought him back to reality, calling him a fool for zoning out while she was talking. Honestly, watching these two argue like an old married couple is pure pleasure. Gosuku suddenly reveals a bit of the legend says he must investigate that mysterious black stone and the spirit liberation troop. So their big adventure is hit by a huge delay. Our guy tries to look cool and tells her, "Don't worry." But the princess has a completely different plan. She assumes that Zero will just be locked up in the castle with her. Zero is completely confused, wonders why he is supposed to become a permanent resident of the palace. Yusuku is sweating profusely. He is gripped by horror that he will leave her without a trace and go alone. She bursts out with aggression and insists that he stay after all they promised. Even Amari's intervenes and says that letting someone as unpredictable as him go free is too dangerous. Yusuko declared, "Zero is mine, and only I can take care of him." She looked at her sister in such a way that even a raid boss would tremble. She warns Amari's, "Zero is exactly the type of guy you need to keep on a short leash." Zero literally feels the air chilling from all these tense vibrations. Later that night, Zero sprawled out with Chibai while Gyusuku finishes the paperwork. The castle seems peaceful, but the atmosphere here is clearly tense. Something is definitely wrong. Zero suddenly realizes he's staying too long. It's time to step aside and let the princess shine on her own. But suddenly Lily, the maid, runs in with sweets, completely ignoring his personal space. He knows these snacks are just a cover for a serious conversation. Lily doesn't beat around the bush. She asks directly what he really has in mind. Zero admits that when a guy like him is near Gyusuku, it only ruins her reputation. Relief is visible on Lily. She's glad he still has at least a few working brain cells. She doesn't consider him a villain, but she knows well it's better for him to leave the capital. This is not just for the princess, it's to survive. She says he is simply a true unique because he sees spirits. Zero tries to appear calm, but deep down he knows she is right. So it turns out he is not as unnoticed as he thinks. He talks to the air all the time. He asks why his abilities are a real reason to leave this place. Lily stuns everyone. The Spirit Liberation Squad is probably already inside the castle walls. If those freaks in black cloaks find out about Zero, they will track him down and deal with him. They have influential connections, and they will stop at nothing to obtain information about the spirits. Zero suddenly realizes his presence actually puts Gyusuku in even greater danger. He is genuinely stunned. She trusts him with all this information. He lightly slaps her on the forehead and calls her a fool for worrying so much. "And if I don't believe you, then who can I believe in this world?" he says, radiating the true energy of the main hero. Lily admits that she also wants him to stay, but the risk is too great. Zero gently strokes her head for the last time, although she threatens to erase him for it. Under the cover of night, he quietly packs his gear, preparing to break out of there at full speed. They meet in a hidden corner behind huge walls. Lily checks if he forgot anything before he sets off into the unknown. He leaves her, throwing out the classic, "See you, you lousy maid." She replied mockingly, calling him a stinky bug as he walked away. Today, just as the sun began to rise, Zero suddenly realized he probably took too few things. He turns around to ask the spirits for advice and gets the shock of his life. The Chibai army has simply grown to incredible sizes. Now a huge horde of spirits follows him, and this will definitely attract hostile attention. Seeing the spirits suffer, Zero realized he could not ignore the Spirit Liberation Squad. Suddenly he realizes, with this team behind his back, he never truly plays alone. He dismisses all worries and decides to rely on his instincts. It's time to head to the town of Kalet time to finally find out what this world really hides. Zero, resting with Chibai, wonders how long he has already been in this world. Grandfather is bursting with pride and praises his dishes, prepared with his own hands. But Zero is not one to be easily impressed. He called that dish a complete botch. Grandfather loses his head over the insult, while the Chibis simply enjoy the chaos. Grem stops the nonsense and directly asks what Zero really wants. He noticed that Zero was alone and anxiously asked where the redhead had gone. Zero explains that he left her in the capital, and Grandfather just laughs and asks if he had a fight with his wife. During the quarrel, our guy instantly exploded, shouting at the top of his lungs, "She is not my wife." Grandfather admits that when he first approached the window, it seemed to him as if Zero was a ghost. No, in this world, Zero hardly has any of his own, so he needs info from the old man. Gramps is ready to help, so Zero asks if he knows anything about the black egg-shaped stone. Grandfather has no clue about that stone at all, so Zero mentions the Spirit Liberation Squad. It turns out the grandfather knows them, well, they are regular customers who always buy his equipment. Zero is shocked. He can't believe the old man would sell to such a dangerous group. Grandfather just shrugged and waved it off. They are just people who want to free the spirits, aren't they? This completely confused Zero because it contradicts everything he had heard so far. Grandfather dropped some wisdom. A weapon is only as bad as the person holding it. He sharply reminds Zero that he also gave him a weapon, so he has no right to judge. Grandfather is indifferent to their ideals, but is convinced that people can survive perfectly well without spirits. Zero suddenly realizes he feels the same way because he is from a world where there is no magic. Zero's mind starts to get confused as he tries to figure out who the real villains are. Grandfather calls him a weirdo because he really thinks so deeply about the world's problems. He decisively tells Zero, put aside your prejudices and decide for yourself when you see the truth. Zero takes the advice to heart and understands that sitting idly by won't help him understand anything. Zero says thank you, Urograms, and because of this they start shouting at him because the old man is called Uruji. When Zero asks about the great spirits, the grandfather admits that only blacksmithing matters to him. Our guy calls him a worthless person and prepares to return to the forest. He waves goodbye to the old man and feels that now he is much more focused on his mission. Zero decides to return to his forest base to gather information and prepare for expeditions to other villages later. From now on, he will decisively choose his own path. As soon as he reaches his cave, he shouts finally home to the joyful Chibis. The fresh air makes him feel filled with strength. Suddenly the Chibis sensed something was wrong on their territory. Zero asked them to lead. He expected only some small crowd of enemies. Instead, he comes across a huge man with a beard like a mountain. The stranger insists that he is the only one here who is different. Zero does not even hesitate. He decided that this guy is a scoundrel who targeted the Chibai. He begins to overwhelm the old man with a merciless barrage of blows. The Chibis panic and beg him, please stop in Ghana. Zero simply tells that scoundrel, shut up, and continues swinging. The bearded man shouted that he is actually the great spirit of the earth. Zero finally stops and looks at the distorted, shattered face that he himself caused. Even the great spirit is sweating profusely. Zero is a real menace. Zero just lashes out at this hairy old man who calls himself the great spirit of the earth. This burly old fool begs for mercy, and Zero demands proof that he is not just some perverted stalker. The old man's proof is simply that he says he looks exactly like those cute Chibis fluttering around. Zero doesn't believe this RNG logic for a second. He started hitting the old man with a series of blows until the Chibis themselves began begging him to calm down. Having calmed down, Zero gives the old man one last chance to explain himself without a new fight. He demands real proof that this weirdo is a high-ranking spirit. The old man tries to use his position, but Zero instantly points out a clear hole in his logic. Supposedly people cannot enter this forest, yet he is standing right here. It becomes much creepier when the old man suddenly utters the name Zero. Zero immediately notices this is a high-level stalker, but Chibai seems to trust him, and only that keeps Zero from erasing him. The old man explains that Zero's ability to see spirits is not just some broken skill of that god with glasses. Turns out this ability works only if your basic characteristics already include that true nature that makes spirits love you. That is, our guy, even before being transferred to another world, was like a magnet attracting these tiny creatures. And to make everything even stranger, the old man starts reading Zero's thoughts, and it's just disgusting. Zero overcomes his awkwardness and asks what this great spirit really wants from him. Zero reflects on the Black Skulls and the Spirit Liberation Squad and realizes that this is beyond his capabilities. He decides he needs to ask the right questions from the very beginning. He reaches for something simple, and spirits, what are they? The old man reveals that spirits are the source of all mana in this world. Without them, the magic system would simply collapse. If the spirits disappear, the mana reserve will drop to zero, and no one will be able to perform magic anymore. And then shock, mana in this world is in complete chaos, Ghana. Zero insists on finding out why mana is glitching, but the old man waved it off and said, go and quickly solve this mystery yourself. He tells Zero that he needs to find 3 more great spirits, fire, wind, and water, to learn the truth about the black stone. Then the old man pointed with his finger, as if hinting at the last secret. This secret is the truth about who you really are, Ghana. Our guy froze, stunned, suddenly realizing he has no idea who he really is. The old man explains that Zero is not like other people and must find his own answer on his own. But before the old man disappears, he manages to reach out and touch Zero's iconic iron pipe. Zero is confused, a strange aura envelops his weapon. It seems the old man just received a legendary upgrade for his equipment. He says that the other great spirits are scattered across the northwestern lands and in the south. As soon as Zero gathers his power, he will have to bring it to the altar to save the Chibis. Zero calls to him to return, but the old man just smiles and disappears. Having said goodbye to Zero for the last time, he eagerly awaits their next meeting. Zero thoughtfully looked at the boy in glasses and wondered about the secret he might be hiding. Now our boy has a huge task to save his little friends. After a long session of coming up with theories, he suddenly realizes that his task journal is almost empty. Our boy decides the only way to move forward is to go search for the great spirits. He figures that heading south is the fastest way to pass this level. Suddenly, a wild princess appears and screams for help. This is Gu Suku, and she is being chased by a pack of real giants. Zero is not impressed at all. He is annoyed that she is running away from such small scoundrels. She says she burned 10 of them, but her mana supply is empty to the bottom. Resolutely tells her to stop pretending to be cute. This is not an everyday anime. He decides to take the team upon himself and simply beat the life out of him. Gas Oku calls him a real muscular fool while he rushes into attack. Zero pays no attention to the target. He just starts swinging that heavy weapon. He orders the goblins not to take their eyes off him while he is taking them down. Here he is a real villain, mocking the survivors. He is annoyed that Gyusuku does not provide any useful or supportive buffs. The remaining goblins realize that before them is a real raid boss, and cold sweat instantly breaks out on them. They literally tremble, and Zero just looks at them defiantly. He shows them a scary grimace and says he is just joking, but the fear is very real. Finally, he orders Gyusuku to finish the job. She unleashes a huge fire spell on the rest of the group, engulfing everything around. Zero looks at the burnt, crispy remains and realizes that the battle is finally over. It's clean here, but the real trouble is just beginning. Yusuku beams with a smile, thinking that their teamwork was simply top-notch. Zero sharply brings her back to reality and demands to know why she is here. He sharply tells her, "Go away, I want to make this journey quickly on my own." She says she has calculated everything and knows Zero turned out to be a simple guy. Zero asks if she can even leave her place of origin. She brazenly lies, saying that the king gave her the green light to follow him. She stands right in front of him and shouts that her only plan is to follow Zero-san. Even after being pushed away, she still resolutely clings to him as if she became a permanent member of the squad. Zero finally gives up and tells her that they are heading south to the Great Spirit of Fire. He says the spirit is just a lustful, hairy old man. She asked for the exact coordinates of the spirit's base. Zero suddenly realizes that he hasn't read the task markers at all and now has no idea where to go. He tries to guess what is in the forest, but she points out, to the south only volcanoes and minerals. He is completely exposed, confidence without hesitation, but no real plan. He feels pressure and begins to look for any hidden clues. He pulls out the map and asks for help from the Chibai spirits. Then the Chibis really react to the map and start pointing to different places excitedly. They point to a certain spot, and Zero's calm instantly melts away. This is the Fuse volcano, a zone for the strongest, which is too dangerous for them. Zero ignores the sharp jump in difficulty and tells her to trust the Chubbies as they head to the volcano. "How much longer will you keep bothering?" shouts Zero-san, completely tired of this hassle. He tells Gyusuke that instead of tears, she should spend that energy preparing for the Fuse volcano. Gasako is simply drenched in sweat, because walking such a distance on foot is a complete nightmare for her. Zero-san points to the cold reality. No sensible coachman would approach a zone with a no-entry ban anyway. Our guy decides to go there on foot himself, while Gusaku returns to the castle to get a ride. Gusaku realizes that she is about to be left behind, and suddenly a powerful lag hits her mind. She instantly retreats, pretending that the carriage is being repaired, just so as not to leave him alone. She forcedly laughs to hide the traces, but Zero-san feels that something is clearly wrong with the atmosphere. An unusual rustling in the trees instantly alerts them both something huge is approaching. They both froze because the tension in the air suddenly jumped to a dangerous level. Suddenly, a real monster burst out of the thicket, a huge, monstrous flower. Zero-san is stunned at how enormous this cursed plant is. Yusuko immediately understood. This is a dead flower, a monster that usually feeds only on animal corpses. But this thing is clearly angry at them and started mercilessly chasing them. Yusuku suggests burning it, but but Zero-san hesitates. He does not dare to start a fire in the forest. He decides that they just need to run after all. They have not been directly attacked yet. Usaku, drunk with love, dreams of eloping while they run away from the scene together. Suddenly, a vine sharply lashes out and grabs Zero-san's leg without any warning. He is abruptly lifted into the air, hanging like bait while the monster looms over him. He curses the plant, trying to break free, but his blunt weapon is almost powerless against these vines. Suddenly he realizes this cannot be shaken off, and he cannot reach the main body to counterattack. The plant opens its jaws, and inside are nightmarish teeth dripping with thick, sticky slime. Zero-san understood that he was about to be eaten and shouted to Gyusuku, "Blow that thing away with your magic." She releases a powerful blast, but the plant proves clever. It uses Zero-san as a shield and takes the hit itself. Gyusuku screams in horror, convinced that she just erased her partner. She decides that there is no other choice. She must follow her husband into the afterlife. But before that, she directs her pure rage to incinerate the enemy. A huge fiery storm flared up, and Zero-san's voice miraculously cut through all this chaos. Guska still pretends to be a tragic heroine, swearing to join him in the afterlife soon. And Zero-san sharply pulls her out of that state, complaining that his whole body hurts terribly. He thanks her for sparing him, imagining that she held back all her power to save him. Yusuko, with an empty gaze, admits that she doesn't remember being gentle at all. She tries to pass it off as ordinary. Supposedly, she was just focused on killing the monster. She throws him a cheeky smile as the tension from the fight finally subsides. Zero-san rarely shows gratitude, but this time he says, "Thank you for saving me." Yusuko was on cloud 9 when he was noticed, and Zero-san says he survived friendly fire thanks to his armor. He looked at the stats screen and his battered gear, realizing how close he was to the end of the game. He realizes that from now on they will have to work much more carefully as a team. Zero-san decides that his dumb weapon is a complete failure in such clashes. He decides that he needs a Nada knife to easily cut through these plant crowds. They decide to visit the nearby town to rest a bit and gear up before the real trial on the volcano. Zero is simply melting from the heat, while the fire spirits are wildly having fun. Grace explains that the entire area is enhanced by the fused volcano, turning the south into a tropical biome. Due to the temperature, this area is simply flooded with stone and fire chibis. Our guy didn't waste a moment and immediately signs a new contract with one of those little ones. He starts to wonder if there is even a limit to the size of his team because he just keeps gathering them. Grace noted that since Zero is a fire mage, this heat shouldn't even touch his HP scale. Although he is all sweaty, Zero stubbornly says it's just male pride and refuses to admit that it's hard for him. Grace shares some of her water and sighs. Her mana efficiency is terrible because she uses an attribute that is not her main specialization. They have been relentlessly covering this road for 10 days straight. Now Grace stays afloat, only thanks to some special elixir of spirits that Zero got for her. Zero gently patted his chibai on the head when they finally reached the destination. They arrive at the mining town of Fura, a place where people go either to get rich in a moment or to fall for a scam. Grace thinks the locals are scary, but then jokes that they are nothing compared to the aura Zero radiates. All our guy wants is to find a normal, cool hotel and finally eat properly after that exhausting journey. But RNG is definitely against them. Today they are immediately intercepted. It turns out Amari's found them, and Grace looks as if a world boss appeared right in front of her. Zero understands that Amari's is boiling with anger. Grace, like a true pro, quietly slipped out of the castle without permission. He tries to defuse it with light chatter, but Amari's is not in the mood for conversation at all. She draws a blade as if ready to erase the Zero, save right here and now. She calls him a fool for thinking he would get away with it. Suddenly, a powerful explosion shakes the vicinity, and Grace has to drag Zero away from the blast zone. They rush to run, saving their own lives, while Zero shouts about the mess he has been dragged into. Amari's yells at them, convinced that it was Zero who launched that magical attack. She is simply boiling. Someone dared to use magic within the city limits. Zero shouts back, "It's not me, I literally can't do magic." When it seemed all was lost, a carriage slowly turned the corner. Lily is at the wheel. She shouts to Grace and Zero, "Get in before they crush you." Lily wonders why Zero is even here, but tells them to move him. Amari's is approaching. Zero barely manages to grab the back of the carriage as it speeds off. Amari's remains in the dust, shouting, "I will kill you," as they escape. The Chibis just watch as chaos unfolds while the carriage races away. Grace sharply tells Zero to step aside. She will take the rear line herself. Suddenly, a huge magical wall rises and blocks the pursuit. The whole scene seems to turn into a high-stakes risky robbery. They only have 30 minutes left to manage to escape. They burst through the southern gate, and Zero realizes that now they officially look like a group of terrorists. Finally, they drove into the cave to hide from the search party. Lily instantly lunged at Zero, called him a stinky bug, and growled at Grace for abandoning her. The atmosphere becomes incredibly heavy as they prepare for a huge lore drop. Lily dropped a real bomb. She miraculously told Zero that he is suspected of attempting to overthrow the royal family. Zero is completely stunned by this accusation. Our guy's reputation was utterly trampled overnight. He was called a criminal of the highest order. Zero completely loses his mind when he finds out he is accused of treason. Yusaku quietly giggles in the background, while our guy completely breaks down over this misunderstanding. He suddenly realizes that it was she who dragged him into this mess from the very beginning. A hard day when even your own summons troll you and portray you as a criminal. Lily throws a shock. Princess Amaris is currently hunting him herself. Zero thinks he can talk his way out, acting completely indifferent. The girls look at him as if he has truly lost his mind. And Lily explains that these accusations are just a smokescreen to capture him. This time Grace finally decides to spill all the details why she ran away from the castle. She explains this is exactly why she had to flee. It turned out that some influential players in the capital know Zero sees Chibai. They didn't come for talks, they want to seize him and use his power. It seems Amaris is just a bluff. Her brains are all muscle, so she is not involved in this conspiracy. Grace tried to warn her sister, but the villain just rushed outside, ignoring everyone. Zero wonders how he himself leaked his secret. Lily shoved the truth in his face. He constantly talks to the air in public. The Spirit Liberation Army has already effectively infiltrated the highest levels of the server. We are talking about the commander and the minister who pull the strings. Zero does not remember these NPCs at all. But as soon as they describe a gorilla-like face and a minister with a mafioso face, everything finally falls into place. He wonders what plan those old men have concocted. The villains crave colossal power, the kind that is granted only by making contracts with several spirits. Zero looked at his Chibai army and realized he is essentially a walking cheat code. He finally stops endlessly scrolling through the grim news and realizes that both girls just wanted to save him. Yusuku begins to cry. She never thought he would be accused of betrayal. Zero gently strokes her head so she understands it is not her fault. Lily begins to feel useless, just a secondary heroine. Grace will not tolerate this and pulls her into an embrace. Grace tells Lily, drop the maid image and just be yourself. Now they are a squad and rank no longer matters. Lily asks what to do next while the sun sets behind the mountain. Zero thinks about letting Amaris catch him because she is a burly fool who will protect him. The girls immediately rejected this suicidal mission. Zero knows he won't let his friends get banned because of him. He stands and intently gazes at the massive volcano towering in the distance. He decides the next quest is a speedrun straight into Fuse Volcano. This is a forbidden zone, knights wouldn't dare pull aggro there. Lily thinks he is a complete idiot for venturing into such a high-level zone. But no smiles because at the end of the dungeon awaits a great fire spirit. The squad ran into an impenetrable wall at the foot of Fuse Volcano. This is a completely closed zone. Zero understands. Their carriage is not at all for off-road. They will have to leave it right here. There is almost no grass left around here. It feels like a real oven. When the carriage goes back, our guy is already drenched in sweat from passive heat damage. Lily is like a human air conditioner. She uses her icy magic to always stay cool. Zero tries to catch some of that fresh coolness, but behaves like a complete scoundrel. Kasuku is literally dying of shame, and Zero just wants to survive this unbearable heat. He decides that the plan is to rush straight to the top of the volcano. Lily cannot stand his nonsense and quickly puts him in his place because he is a maggot. But suddenly the Chibis catch a strange signal in the air. They point to a certain place, as if they found a hidden task mark. The girls think that Zero has completely lost his mind. He is staring at a real cliff. He pretends as if spirits are whispering their secrets to him. Even before they manage to argue, he is already climbing the rock like a real pro. Finally, he reaches the summit. It looks like he has only 1 HP left. The squad glanced at the summit, and around only a desolate wasteland. Lily says that it is a complete wasteland. No prey is visible here. Suddenly, the whole map trembled, as if a huge boss was about to appear. Under their feet, the ground suddenly begins to crack, and a giant abyss opens before them. Zero tries to divert the enemy's attention and shouts to the girls, "Fight me, run." But it is already too late. The entire platform collapses into the abyss. They suddenly fall into free fall, and debris rains around them. Zero wakes up with the feeling that a raid boss of the highest rank has just pinned him down. For a moment, he was overwhelmed by nostalgia. He remembered how he first met his Chibai comrades. He suddenly came to his senses and checked the spirits. They looked completely crushed. He reassures them, "Don't worry, this fall happened simply due to bad random chance." He looks back and sees Gasuku and Lily. They look like they were just deleted. Eventually they wake up, but Lily is gripped by horror when she sees blood on her hands. Gusko is confused. Although she felt nothing. It's a real miracle that after such a fall, they didn't all become ghosts. It turned out Chibai played like real healers. They gave medicine so they would stay alive. Out of nowhere, a wave of depression surged over Basuku. She is actually melting because she can't see the spirits to thank them herself. Lily ruined the moment again by calling Zero a larva because they got stuck in a pit. Suddenly they realized they are trapped inside a volcano and there is no way up. Zero notices a faint light at the end of the tunnel. Walking along the path, they suddenly come across a huge cave hidden deep underground. Yusuko is stunned. It's so hot here that even her fire resistance doesn't hold up. Zero pays no attention to the heat. He senses a huge presence hiding in the shadows. He steps forward and loudly demands that the great spirit of fire show itself. The room froze in dead silence, and Zero looks like a real clown in front of the girls. He tells them to shut up while trying to maintain his dignity. Suddenly, the entire cave exploded with a terrifying aura. Zero suddenly realizes he actually attracted the boss to himself and prepared for the strike. From the depths of the fire emerges a huge obsidian dragon. Here it is the real giant they were looking for, and it looks like it will wipe their entire team off the face of the earth. The fight with the boss of the century has just arrived, and at Zero's call, the giant dragon responded. The girls instantly break out in sweat and start to run away. This real behemoth lets out a roar that would make any low-level player delete the game. Zero did not even flinch. He shouted to check if this monster was really the great spirit of fire. The team thinks he has gone crazy all because he dared to speak to the raid boss. The dragon really responds. There is offense in its voice, as if an ordinary person dared to step onto its territory. It decides to skip the dialogue and immediately throw up the game over screen. Lily refuses to be cannon fodder and stands up to defend the squad. Grace focuses her strongest ice magic, hoping to hold back the fire and reduce the incoming damage. The strike is furious, throwing everyone back as if they had just stepped on a mine. Zero rushes to check his team, but Gyusuku comes under fire. A huge explosion shook everything around as the dragon's power hit the target directly. The look on her face says it all. It's a complete failure. Zero sharply accelerates to the limit, knowing that his partner is about to be wiped out. Even with fire resistance, taking that explosion head-on is a death sentence. Dust settles over the stage, which looks as if the entire team has been wiped out. Our guy is in despair, reaching out to save her before her life gauge drops to zero. The maid screamed at the top of her lungs, fearing the worst had already happened. "I'm sure not a single bone will remain of that person," the narrator warns. Miraculously, Zero finds Gyusuku alive and holds her close after everything that happened. He is completely baffled. He doesn't understand why he doesn't even have a scratch. Even the dragon is confused, demanding to know why its own power is protecting the human. Suddenly, a huge wave of tiny spirits appears from nowhere, rushing to aid our guy. These chibis are everywhere. They literally form a protective wall around them. Finally, Zero understands everything. These little ones are true heroes. A new opponent appeared and sharply shouted at the dragon, "Retreat immediately." It is the great fire spirit itself, dressed in incredibly massive, heavy armor. The dragon does not believe its eyes. A spirit of the highest level has taken the side of the human. The spirit in armor tells the dragon to take a closer look at what Zero really is. The dragon looked closely for a long time and finally saw the hidden potential in the main hero. It decides to grant the request and leaves the place without any fuss. The giant beast flies away, leaving the group alone for now. The girls finally stop panicking when the great fire spirit officially introduces itself. Zero is shocked because ordinary people are not supposed to see such a high-level creature. He is tormented by the thought, does this mean everyone sees those other lustful spirits he deals with? Jokes aside, Zero turns back and sincerely thanks the little spirits for carrying him. But one of the chibai starts glowing with a strange, dim light. It hurriedly whispered to Zero that he needs to know one thing before it disappears. The little man vanishes, leaving behind a mysterious black stone. Zero catches the object, eyes shining with curiosity. What kind of trophy has he just obtained? The girls are also completely confused. Where did this stone come from? The fire spirit explains that this stone is a spirit that has fallen into a deep sleep. Spirits are pure magic, and usually they just allow users to borrow it. It gave its last battery charge just so the dragon wouldn't bend Zero. The realization that the little creature sacrificed itself to save them painfully hits the entire squad. Tension thickens. The fire spirit prepares to release more. He throws Zero a question, and the whole game turns upside down. What is the purpose of the Spirit Liberation Army? He demands as the tension reaches its peak. The Great Fire Spirit demands to know Zero's true intentions, but our guy is not in the mood for talk at all. He can stop thinking about the Chibai who spent all the mana and turned into a cold black stone. He clearly shows that the goals of the Spirit Liberation Army mean nothing to him at all. Even when the spirit asks why they should release the Chibai, Zero just shrugged and waved it off. It's none of his business. The spirit begins to fade, and Zero is left alone with his thoughts. He clenches the weapon in his hand and realizes he has more questions than answers. Before finally disappearing, the spirit gives him a new task. Head west and meet the Great Wind's spirit. There you will learn who you really are. The time has come, the spirit warns, erasing its presence from this space. Zero is boiling because that huge spirit just talked nonsense and vanished without explaining anything about his legend. Grace tries to check on him, but he is in a bad mood right now. He looked at the fading spirit in his hand and wondered why someone would sacrifice themselves for someone like him. He was breathless when he realized that the little one gave the last drop of his power just to protect him. He feels like complete trash for letting this happen. But other Chibis run up and start comforting him, reminding him that he is not alone. Zero finally understands sitting and grieving won't fix his RNG. He swears right here and now that he will never again allow any Chibai to turn into a black stone. He begins to piece together the puzzle and wonders if these stones are connected to the disturbances in the world's magic. The lack of information drives him mad. He releases all his frustration by simply crushing the nearest stone. He looked like a real maniac. Blood was flowing from his face, and the girls instantly fell into complete panic. Zero decides to immediately rush west. But they hadn't even moved when Amaris and her knights appeared and blocked their way. She has a terrifying commander aura and demands to know what the Great Fire Spirit told them. Zero does not give up. He tells her directly that they are going to meet the Wind Spirit next. Amaris sweats and racks her brain, trying to get to the truth of why the spirits turn into stone. Zero sharply replied that he is just as clueless as she is and is simply doing everything he can. Finally, Grace intervenes and becomes a bridge between them. She reveals a shocking truth. Spirits do not feed on humans. They lend humanity their own magic until they themselves die. Zero process is a bitter truth. The entire system is rigged against Chibai. He gently places his hand on Grace's head to calm her. He tells Amaris that he doesn't care about the rumors or that they will call him a kidnapper. He exudes a terrible pressure, as if he will blow away anyone who dares to stop him. Amaris just laughed, and it turned out that a fresh bounty was again placed on his head. Suddenly, Grace had a true moment of genius. Suddenly, she realizes her sister is actually looking for any excuse to go with her. Amara begins to blush and, smiling shyly, says she can help with a bunch of tasks if she joins the team. The knights can't believe their eyes. Their burly commander is acting so cute. Grace teases her sister, smilingly reminding her that not long ago she was leading the squad to arrest them. She clearly says she travels with Zero not as a hostage, but because she wants to herself. Grace officially calls her sister to join their journey. Amaris fully becomes a caring sister and swears to protect Grace to the ends of the earth. Lily still considers herself a real guerrilla, but no one believes that having a huge machine in the team will help against the knightly order. When the sun began to set, the group finds a way out of this place. Amara sends the knights back to the castle. Now she can act her own way together with the squad. Zero gazes into the horizon, knowing that the real trial is just beginning. Their path is clear, west, to meet the spirit of the wind and save the Chibai. The deputy captain tells how hard and turbulent it became in the castle when the group disappeared. It turned out that Amaris was framed for betrayal. That is why her elite squad raised the alarm so instantly. Zero is actually impressed by their dedication and understands that these soldiers are truly reliable guys, but the mood instantly changes when they confess that they are the official fan club of Amaris. They promise to follow her even when she behaves like a muscular fool, and then a real twist. It turns out they actually want her to tease them. Zero is covered in sweat when he realizes that he is surrounded by a huge club of perverts. the soldiers prepare to return to the castle to draw aggro onto themselves and protect the king. They entrust Amari's K0 with security, responds with a confident thumbs up. Amari's explodes, proudly declares she will protect herself and spits, calling him a worm. The team decides that their next main goal is in the west, and Gyusuku adds that supposedly the great spirit of the wind lives in that direction. The spirits point to a suspicious building on the map that looks like a real dungeon, and Grace says there are rumors that a god lives in the western desert. She confirms that this is the great god of wind, the very one they need to find, and Zero is going crazy because that hidden building is incredibly obvious. He cannot believe it. Gyusuku is acting like a complete fool because of that map. Our guy understands. Stupidity knows no bounds, but he will have to move forward. They officially aim to find that great god of wind. Grace suggests first returning to the city to finally have a good rest. Zero is stunned, is ready to rush on like a speedrunner, while the soldier coldly reminds them that a huge reward is now offered for his head. And even worse, the princess previously simply swept the city to dust, and the soldiers suggest going to the nearest onsen to restore their stats. The idea of a hot spring shocks the girls completely. Even Zero and his army of spirits cannot believe that such a hidden gem turned out to be so close. Finally, the group finishes the long-awaited rest under the soft moonlight. Zero is fully recharged, and on the rise, he is madly eager to return to the fight. He is already ready to set off, while the rest of the company looks completely exhausted from stress. Amari's is already whining that she needs a warm bed and proper food. Zero does not tolerate this, reminding the villain that he and Lily are the ones carrying the entire heavy burden in the kitchen. He began to pick on her, but Grace immediately intervened to protect her lady from the insect. The maid finally stopped the quarrel, ordered the girls to get to the carriage, and sent Zero to distract the patrol. Zero sharply reminds everyone that this is not some trip for fuel. They are literally fugitives accused of treason. He sets out to inspect the surroundings, but it is clear that he is boiling with anger because he has again been made the errand boy of the group. As he walks, he tries to process the crazy pile of legends that have been thrown at them recently. The goal is simple: to meet the majestic spirit of the wind and find out who he really is. Suddenly, Zero felt someone's presence in the shadows and sharply turned around. The old woman seemed to have teleported right behind him, and he had a severe heart attack. But she is surprisingly calm, inviting him to sit down and chat a little. Inside Zero, alarm instantly rang as soon as she blurted out his name, as if everyone already knows about him. He tries to fit her face into a memory, wondering if she is just a random saleswoman he once met. Grandmother laughed, instantly reading his thoughts, and said to him, "Think better about why I am here." She warns him, a little caution can actually help recognize a top-level player as soon as he sees him. Zero smiled slyly, realizing that only one type of NPC is capable of such hacks. A tense moment settled between them. Our guy finally understood. "Am I right, Great Wind Mistress?" he asks, finally summoning her. She confirms his guess and teases him, saying, "Look, you really are clever enough to understand everything." However, Zero is confused and asks why she went for a walk instead of camping near her temple. She claims that technically she is still in the temple, and this really messes with Zero's mind. He cannot comprehend how she manages to pull off this trick, being in two places at once. He rages at the mysterious grandmother for talking in circles, like all the other great spirits. He demands to know if something happened at her base. She gives him an almost correct guess, and this makes him even more upset. And then she drops a bomb. The Spirit Liberation Army has already occupied the great temple of the wind god. They say she is the easiest to track, so she became their main target. Zero thinks they want to free the spirits, but in reality, everything is much more suspicious. The enemy's plan is to lower a huge barrier to firmly lock the temple. This will trap the spirits inside and not let anyone else in. Zero considers this a huge hassle and struggles to understand the logic of this move. He wonders, do they just want to completely separate people from the spirits? If they do that, they will cut themselves off from the spirits, and that is completely senseless. Grandmother suddenly turns and sharply asks Zero what he was really doing during his journey. He tells her that they were just having fun together, eating and traveling like an ordinary group. She throws a deep thought in his face and warns, "Don't consider anyone a good person just because you were told so." Zero suddenly realizes she wants him to stop being a sheep and start thinking with his own head. He hadn't even managed to ask something else when Grandma suddenly began to dissolve into clouds of smoke. She leaves him with a final warning about the barrier and feverishly whispers for him to hurry to the temple. Zero remains standing alone, irritated by this mysterious exit. Despite his confusion, he knows it's time to rush to the temple and figure out what is really happening there. The Great Spirit of the Wind turns out to be the same strange old lady from that time. The Spirit Liberation Army is busy erecting the barrier in the sanctuary of the Wind God, so the group has to bypass the village and rush straight into the thick of the battle. Gray still can't get rid of the thought that Zero sees spirits that no one else sees. She thinks it's all because he is a person from another world. But Null is not entirely sure that this is the only reason. He is tormented by a bunch of questions about his own power, and he must find that old grandma spirit to learn the truth. Finally, they reach the shrine and see the same small enemies they had already encountered before. The girls are ready to rush to the entrance, but Zero raises his hand and stops them. He is worried that if they use their most powerful magic, they will accidentally destroy the sanctuary. They hadn't even started arguing about the plan when the cultists noticed them and demanded to know who was there. Zero boiled over, showering the girls with reproaches that were so noisy that they lost the element of surprise. He is trying his best to convince them that negotiations should always be the first choice. He steps forward and with a friendly smile tells the girls to watch how he handles this. Since Zero looks like a real hooligan, his attempt to be friendly turns into a complete nightmare. The soldiers broke out in sweat, called him a devil, and immediately charged the attack. Zero gets irritated and in a moment takes them down, grumbling that he just wanted to talk. He was really hurt that they called an ordinary person like him a demon. Within seconds, the guards were tied up and beaten so badly that they fell silent. Lara calls him an absolute scoundrel for making such a terrible facial expression to lure himself a chance. Grace thinks it's just Zero acting as usual, but they realize that even more enemies await them in the sanctuary. The rest of the cultists begin chanting some high-level earth magic. The earth starts rumbling and shifting as the spell takes shape. A huge golem emerges from beneath the ground, a real burly giant. Grace is shocked these guys really managed to perform a summon that cost them so dearly. Zero is unimpressed and thinks that the giant pile of stones looks so silly that it just needs to be run past. Grace warns him the golem has no delay, it will move much faster than he can imagine. She is right, the monster lunges forward with terrifying speed. Both Grace and Lara rushed into the area, unleashing a barrage of magic and sword strikes on the beast. They managed to smash the golem's body into pieces. Zero thinks the fight is over, but Grace yells at the idiot, "Keep your eyes open." The stones on the ground began to glow and tremble. As long as there is earth to draw from, this thing regenerates health endlessly. Zero is furious. He calls this regeneration pure cheating. The golem does not wait for him to stop complaining and attacks with all its might. Zero barely dodges the blow, but the dust cloud makes it hard to breathe. The golem caught him by surprise, and with one direct hit, knocked him back so hard he flew. Zero is now sweating, realizing that his usual physical attacks have no effect on that stone body at all. He cannot use magic himself, so he is stuck in a really bad situation. He glanced past the monster and noticed the wizard near the sanctuary. He understands if he takes out the mages, the golem will probably crumble. The problem is that the golem is a huge, muscular guardian blocking any path to the rear. Zero suddenly realizes, to win, he will have to resort to magic. He smiled sinisterly, deciding to make a very risky move. He tells the lady spirit to wait because he is about to give it his all. Amaku was drenched in sweat. This golem is a real giant. He needs a break to buy enough time and craft a counter belt. She knows it's a crazy risk, but she believes in our guy. She prepares her blade, looking incredibly cool, before rushing into battle. She doesn't even flinch, looking the giant in the eyes. Grace bursts in herself, while the others just watch as she draws all the enemy's attention. Amaku turned to Yusuko, and with a spark in her eyes asked if she could crank up the heat of her fire magic to the maximum. Then he looked at Lily and demanded that she prepare a huge block of ice. Lily is confused, but says she can manage if someone stops the monster's movement. He doesn't have time for a long retelling of legends, they can only trust the process. Grace leans back, grumbling that the golem's regeneration is pure pay-to-win garbage. Amaku tells her to lure the monster to the mages and break its leg. She smiles slyly. For a top-level player, it's like a walk in the park. He suddenly realizes that those strange ones in robes are using the golem as a living shield, hiding behind it. Grace thinks they are fleeing, but in Amak's mind, a much more cunning plan is spinning. They do not retreat, they are about to remove this thing from the server. They split up and rushed from both sides to trap the monster. The wizards began to panic when they realized that the squad was surrounding them. Grace shouted to Amak, "Get ready to finish it off." She hits incredibly powerfully. The golem's leg literally folds in half. Now the mage will feel the pressure on himself. Yusuke allows Lucy to unleash such a stream of fire that even a dragon would envy. The heat is so insane that Amek's own jacket seems to no longer work. Lily approaches next, ready to show a cold shoulder. She throws a giant piece of ice the size of a glacier directly into the molten rock. As soon as the ice touches the heat, everything becomes spicy. Thermal shock causes a powerful reaction. Suddenly, a huge explosion that shook the entire vicinity. A huge cloud of steam and debris envelops the battlefield. The girls coughed in the smoke and wondered if they had really left the stage. Something is still rattling inside that huge crater. One of the mages is still holding on to life, looking as if he is about to explode with rage and throw everything away. He screams that he will never forgive them, they destroyed his plan. Amaku simply indifferently steps on his head to put an end to the dialogue. The pilot was knocked out, and the golem finally crumbles to dust. Finally, the path to the temple was cleared of minor mobs. Lily asks how he knew the explosion would happen, and he honestly admits he just guessed. The squad moves toward the entrance of the dark temple. Amaku warns everyone, stay alert, the boss might still be inside. The little spirits follow behind, trying hard to keep calm. Suddenly, Amako crashes straight into something and almost breaks his nose. Then their path is suddenly blocked by a hidden barrier. They are stuck outside, staring at an invisible wall that ruins their speedrun. Zero just tries to follow the group to the shrine of the wind god and instantly crashes into a literal invisible wall. The girls suddenly realize this higher-level barrier is created specifically to block both people and spirits. Since they can just break their way through, the team decides to split up and hunt for another entrance. Our guy is already ready to just spend the night outside, but the Chibis start whining and insist that we go inside immediately. Zero understands he can't just ignore his little companions, so he decides to put the Chibi first and find a way through the main entrance. He slowly pushes the heavy doors of the sanctuary, tensing and preparing for any crowd of small enemies that might be lurking on the other side. Instead of a boss fight, he finds a suspicious figure in a hood standing next to the great spirit of the wind. The hooded man looked irritated and muttered that he should have put a stronger barrier on the gates to keep people out. He turned with a creepy, polished smile that just screams, "Final boss," and grabbed his chest. He immediately identifies our guy as Zero, looking like he's about to explode with genuine admiration. The guy introduced himself as Koya from the Spirit Liberation Army and tried to pretend they were completely on the same side. Zero doesn't believe this friendly show for a moment and throws in his face that he was the one who announced the huge bounty on his head. Koya tries to blame it on a council mistake, but Zero instantly realizes this guy is completely the opposite of him in every way. Koya admits he actually came to make a contract with the Great Spirit of the Wind, but that old lady rejected him. Great spirits don't play by human rules. The spirit rejected him, and he even has the audacity to ask Zero to join his organization. Zero coldly gave a firm no and sent him away saying he only wants to talk to the old lady. Koya's smile froze on his face, but Zero sees his eyes are dead cold, as if he's looking down on a bug. He claims that the true goal of the army is to free and subjugate the spirits for the sake of saving the world. In Zero's mind, alarm bells instantly ring the moment he hears the word control. He begins to lose his composure. The tension in the room is already on the verge of explosion. Koya explains that the world today is like a broken game. Everything glitches because spirits are slowly disappearing from existence. He pulls out a glowing orb and explains that it is actually a spirit's egg or a magical stone. When a spirit burns all its mana, it turns into this stone likeness and must recover over several years. Zero instantly realized, spirits have a rebirth timer, but there's a huge trick hidden here. People extract these stones to make batteries for magical devices, thereby killing spirits even before they manage to return. The rust of black magic is especially dangerous. It mercilessly sucks mana from anyone who touches it. Koya explains that as soon as these spirit eggs become transparent, people begin to treat them as precious loot. They drain power for jewelry and equipment, and Zero understands. This is actually a slow genocide of the spirit race. At first, Zero almost believes that the Spirit Liberation Army could be on the side of good if they are really trying to stop this. But then Kuya reveals his distorted logic. They want to monopolize the spirits so that only those who are allowed can use them. Zero decisively demands to know what he really means by control. Koya plans to create a world where only those who live by the army's rules can make contracts. He assures that this will put an end to the hunting of spirits and bring only a false peace to the world. The majestic spirit of the wind looks and whispers to Zero that he and Kuya are two sides of the same coin because the spirits love them both. Zero feels absolute disgust at such a comparison and categorically refuses to be part of the plan to conquer the world. He suddenly realizes Koya simply wants to use the spirits as a cheat code to rule humanity. Our guy finally snaps and shouts that Kuya is just a dumb jock who wants to control the source of all magic so that everyone kneels before him. But when magic is needed every day, the one who controls the spirits essentially holds the whole world hostage. People simply had no choice. They had to follow the army if they wanted the lights to stay on in their homes. Zero shouts that Koya does not care at all about what the Chibai really want. He fiercely hates Koya and clearly makes it known that imposing one's beliefs on others is never the right move. Koya understood that his attempt to recruit had failed, so he decided to retreat for now without a fight. Zero strictly tells him to be silent, swearing to create a world where Chibai can live peacefully, not being used as tools. The Great Spirit of the Wind warns Zero, if the world sides with Kuya's methods, everything will lean toward that dark future. She gives him the next quest marker: head north, where the Great Water Spirit awaits. She gifts him a new legendary item and promises that soon he will truly understand how great his power is. His journey to meet the other great spirits continues, and the stakes have never been higher. Zero realizes, sooner or later, he will have to decide which future he will fight for. He clenches his chest, determined to find a way to save everyone without becoming a tyrant. Zero is simply boiling with rage over the qualifying test he just passed. The old woman quietly whispered to him that his next quest marker is far to the north. Suddenly, a powerful rumble echoed from the entrance, and Zero hurriedly slipped away. Grandmother just watches him leave and wonders which path he will take in this chaotic sprint of life. Zero finds his team near the entrance. They are simply in panic. Amari's looks like she is about to hit him with a boss-level combo for going alone. Even the girl healer has that scary smile that clearly says, your HP is about to drop to 0. They have completely lost patience because of his solo queue antics and want to teach him a lesson themselves. Realizing that he is about to be taken down, our guy decides to use his most powerful move. The girls have no idea what strategy he is preparing there. He unleashes on them the legendary 90-degree bow, begging for mercy. He thinks he has an IQ of 200 and sincerely believes that no one can stay angry long after a sincere apology. He smiles to himself. He thinks he won the fight with a cheap trick. MRSC looks right through the cap and exposes him as a fake. He tries to pretend everything is under control, while Chibai in the background is literally drenched in sweat. The little spirits are literally sobbing from the sheer tension in the air. Finally, the priestess lets him go, but Zero looks as if his soul has completely left his body. Then they come across a boy from the Liberation Army who is just wandering among the ruins. It turned out Amari's simply activated muscle logic and physically broke the magical barrier. This boy couldn't even escape. His entire team was wiped out. Zero is shocked. Why can't a supposedly high-ranking mage just dispel his barrier? And right then the villain drops a lore bomb. He is exactly like Zero and doesn't know a bit of magic at all. Like our host, he is a rare player adored by spirits. This is the very boy Zero encountered when he met the Great Wind Spirit. Amari's instantly drew her blade, ready to erase this boy from the server. Zero must intervene and stop the execution before everything turns into chaos. The boy is completely terrified by that creepy blonde aura. Zero swears he will bury that boy someday, but says now is not the time. The boy began to whine as if he was already being buried, but Zero shouted at him to focus. He looked at the boy and asked if he really seriously wanted to save the spirits. Zero admits that he hates this boy to the bone and wants to smear him with honey and cover him with wasps. However, he cannot say that the boy's goals are completely lame. Zero decides his next move is to head north to meet the Great Spirit of Water. He ordered this boy to go with them and become their new guide. The girls simply went crazy over whom they chose. Zero just slapped the boy so that he would finally calm down. He explains that although he is not a saint, he cares too much about the Chibis to let them suffer. He directly exposes the boy. He uses the spirits for his own benefit. Zero smiled sinisterly and called the boy a little brat who needs to know his place. Everyone froze from Zero's sudden, dominant energy. That guy is now officially a bound hostage and not even sure he will keep his word. The girls agreed if he tries any trick, they will just get rid of him. Zero looks at the bigger picture and knows they are better off when they stick together. With a new friend nearby, the squad heads north. The girls simply melted because their prisoner constantly tries to disappear. Zero doesn't even sweat Chibai, watch him around the clock. It turns out Lily really set traps all around the perimeter, and the sounds of that poor guy being beaten over there in the distance are real music to them. Now they were heading north to a place called Lake Zilli to find a higher-level water spirit. Finally, our guy finds a runner hanging upside down and looking like a complete clown. Zero throws the phrase, "Yo, kid," but he is too busy crying over his life choices to respond. As soon as he was lowered, the guy somehow instantly changed clothes without any pause. He realizes that his old Liberation Army of Spirits uniform is now like a big target on his back. The maid just wants to bury this guy and put an end to it, but Zero believes he might be useful for the team roster. Moreover, Zero knows, if that guy tries to harm them again, there is someone nearby who will gladly delete his save file. Amaku literally hangs in the background. With a deadly aura, even pros would start sweating as if under bullets. To show that he is not just a weak mob, the guy covered the table with pancakes that looked like a scene from a luxurious country house. The girls start eating and cannot help but admit the taste is truly top-notch. Zero smiled slyly. He knew that his plan to delegate household chores to others works flawlessly. He even threw a compliment to the maid, and she instantly fell into complete panic. Now that he is officially tamed, the guy begins listing his useful skills, such as driving a cart and cooking exquisite dishes. Since Zero did not invest any points in those life skills, he decides to keep him nearby. The guy starts pretending to be some legendary unit of the prince, while the rest of the squad just look at him with complete disapproval. He honestly admits, at home he is just a machine, and in real combat a complete zero. Grace again turned her attention to the main goal and asked how they were progressing towards Zelipond. Amaku still remembers how she once trained there, but brings bad news about that area. It turns out the path is blocked by a huge, disgusting swamp. Zero instantly loses balance walking through mud, is the worst of all environmental debuffs. He says going around would take months, so they have to go straight through that mud. Grace tries to look cool, but you can see how she barely stays on her feet in the mud. That prince tries to dodge. He doesn't want to soil his royal outfit. Amaku is not going to give in. She just drags him into the mud, threatening with a whip. Even the maid looks at the swamp, as if she'd rather face a boss in a game than step there. The hike is a continuous trial. The environment drains strips of endurance from everyone. Grace breathes heavily, but doesn't give up. She wants to prove she has reached a new level. Suddenly, the maid notices a possible safe zone ahead. Lily finally found a small patch of dry land where they can rest. That prince tries to be a gentleman and extends his hand to Grace, but she repays him with a look of pure disgust. Instead, she turns to Zero and begs him to carry her. Amaku threatens to twist that guy just for looking at her sister, and Zero just sighs and gets to work. He lifts Grace, but wading through the swamp carrying another player on his shoulders is almost like playing on a difficult level. But every step is a constant struggle, and that Grace that is always moving does not make it any easier. Just as they almost reach the platform, Zero feels the ground suddenly shift beneath his feet. The maid screamed a warning in Horosh, realized that what Zero stepped on was not solid ground at all. A huge shadow looms over Thema. Giant snake head slowly emerges from the mud. It turns out the stone Zero was leaning on was actually the back of the snake boss. As soon as things started heating up, a giant trash snake suddenly jumped out of the murky swamp. Our guy instantly realizes they are in deep trouble. Dodging in knee-deep mud is almost impossible. Amari's does nothing to lift the mooch, laughs, and says they are like sitting ducks about to be eaten. Lily will not tolerate this and slaps her to bring her to her senses, while Zero checks if Gyusuku can move at all. Turns out the poor thing is completely stuck in the mud in this fight. She is a total burden. Zero is sweating profusely, searching for any stable support so he can really fight back. He looks the monster straight in the eyes and, together with his little spirit helper, tries to come up with a plan. Suddenly something clicks in his head. They realize what is happening to the ground beneath them. He growls at Lily to use her ice magic and freeze the swamp. She thinks he is asking for a world-class spell, complains that she can't freeze everything at once, and he explains he only needs a solid platform under their feet. The plan is simple. Lily freezes a small area to stand on, and Zero becomes bait to lure aggro away from the snake. But then the guy in the cloak intervenes and says, "Let's just freeze the snake itself." Lily called him a complete fool, explaining that the mana cost would be insane. Even if they managed, such a huge snake would just flex its muscles and instantly break the ice. Despite the logic, the guy just smiles and still asks Lily to try. Lily decides to take a risk, tells Zero to cover the others while she focuses. Zero picks up Yusuko and helps him stand, ready to lead the squad to a safer place. They rush away, trying to break free from the monster. Zero still can't believe it. Could these two really handle a boss-level threat with just one spell? The one in the cloak simply tells Lily, "Calm down and strike the serpent with your most powerful magic." Lily shouts stop, releasing energy, and Zero's jaw drops. This is not some minor frostbite. A huge dome of absolute zero magic bursts from her hands. The entire area is engulfed in blinding light, and icy shards scatter around. Zero can hardly believe his eyes. The swamp turns into an Arctic desert. When the fog recedes, the giant serpent is completely encased in a massive pillar of ice. Lily is utterly stunned by what she has done, and the cloaked boy just smiles as if it was all part of a speedrun. She knows well that her stats aren't that high, and clearly sees it wasn't just about her power. Zero watches them from afar, piecing together in his mind the puzzle of what just happened. But there is no time to analyze. Zero feels that the danger has not yet passed. He shouts for them to run back because huge blocks of ice are starting to fall from the sky. While the others panic, the boy in the cloak slyly winks and tells them not to just freeze in place. Amaris rushes into action, calling everyone to retreat, preparing to take the blow herself. She throws herself forward and shields the group from the falling debris. The ice fell with a deafening crash, raising a huge cloud of snow and steam. Yusuke rushes to check on everyone, hoping that no one was crushed by the glacier's fall. The group is safe, and the boy in the cloak even gets a cheeky hug from Amaris, which makes Zero and Yusuke look very annoyed. Finally clearing the swamp, they exhaled. The sun meanwhile had already begun to set. Lily still cannot get rid of the thought, why did her magic feel so different and too strong there? Zero tries to appear calm, telling her that everything is fine. The main thing is that everyone got out safe and sound. Zero deeply inside feels something is clearly wrong with that boy in the cloak. He glances at the smiling man and senses in him some secret power that he cannot precisely identify. But the burden of this secret clearly weighs on him, and he tells the group that he is simply tired and must go to sleep. Dasuku waves his hand with a bright smile and thanks him for the ride. Zero feels he is getting closer and closer to meeting the last great spirit. He lies down under the moonlight, but gloomy thoughts bustle in his head. He tells himself, as soon as everything becomes clear, he will finally be able to surrender. A harsh cliffhanger, Guys, our hero suddenly realizes the truth he has been avoiding all this time, and the team finally reaches the Zali Pond after destroying that huge snake. This place is the finale of their current adventure. While the girls instantly jump into the water to refresh themselves, our boy Zero is all on guard. Lily and the others are insanely happy to return to their element. They behave as if this is just a beach filler episode, but clearly something is wrong here. Of course, the local simp tries to offer his help to wash their backs, but he is immediately brushed off. Zero is literally forced to drag him away before he gets cancelled. Our guy is no longer joking. With one quick slap, he puts his friend in his place so he doesn't relax. Even among peaceful landscapes, Zero cannot shake the feeling that something is off here. Koya notices that Zero is literally sweating and decides to find out what is really bothering him. He asks if Zero feels like an outsider despite the great honor of their journey. He even hints that Zero might take all this as some kind of mistake. Zero cannot hold back laughter. It is Koya himself who tries to convince him otherwise. How annoying, he realizes. He has no witty reply. Sudden screams from the pond abruptly interrupted their deep conversation and forced them to rush back. They come across girls who got into a strange trouble. The water itself behaves like a crowd of trash. Instead of helping immediately, Koya advises to watch first, proving that he is a true connoisseur. Zero does not tolerate this and slaps him again, demanding that they find a way to fix this problem. A mysterious voice calls them rude for judging the pond's behavior. Suddenly, the water explodes with a huge splash, as if announcing the appearance of a true level of power. The girls were shocked when the boss himself finally arrived. She calls herself the Great Spirit of Water and warmly welcomes them to her domain. Zero immediately calls her a perverted spirit as soon as she admits that she missed the feeling of young skin. She was not affected by the audacity, and she admits that they have already met other great spirits. Kuya declares without hesitation that he will rule over humans and spirits to fix the disruption of magic in the world. The spirit recognizes Kuya's answer and addresses him as the Great Spirit of Light. This and the girls are simply stunned by this revelation. Zero is stuck in his own head, slowly piecing together the puzzle from the little details he has noticed for several days. He is the only one who can interact with the barriers of the Black Stone, which weaken other spirits. Moreover, his ability to see Chibis has always been a huge red flag. He tried to ignore the truth, but reality looks him straight in the face. The water creature turns its gaze to him and calls him the Great Dark Spirit Zero. Here is the last piece of the puzzle, proof that his humanity has forever remained in the past. Upon learning that Zero is actually a great spirit, the girls simply lost their heads. Our guy is in complete denial. He doesn't believe he could be that legendary. He thought that if he were a spirit, he would just become another cute chibai, not such a huge burly creature with a human body. The she-wolf is not going to tolerate this and demands the lady explain what the hell is going on here. Finally, Zero can't take it anymore and shouts, "Shut up, who do you think is the most confused here?" Even in the midst of the crisis, Zero can't help but notice that the female spirit is a real beauty and incredibly cool. The others from the harem are not thrilled with his staring and throw him deadly looks. Zero tries to ease the irritation and tells them to go change so they can finally focus. The female spirit simply giggles. She is so pleased to hear a compliment about her appearance. She even drops a bomb. "If you want, I don't mind being your fourth, you know." Now Zero returns to the conversation and asks if the statement about the Great Spirit is true. The lady becomes serious and begins to tell the story behind the Great Spirits of light and darkness. First of all, she says, the Great Spirit of light is the one who will fix the world. They were chosen from among the dead of this world, so his body is essentially a ghost. Meanwhile, the Great Dark Spirit is the one who overturns the world and came from another dimension. She looks him straight in the eyes and confirms it is you, Zero. Zero is surprised. Why are they in human form and not looking like garbage monsters? It seems this is so they can absorb human experience and make choices based on it. If they choose a local, he will be forever bound by the common sense of this world. They would simply try to put everything in order, relying on what they already know. But Zero is a joker because he is not held in a cage by the usual common sense of this world. He can make decisions trusting only his own knowledge. So the spirit of light repairs the world without breaking it. And the dark spirit changes it, regardless of local rules. Being human is just a speedrun strategy to understand the world better than Chibai ever could. She said and continues to explain, and they listen attentively. Zero suddenly realizes he has truly crossed the boundary of humanity. The girls look at him, sweating from tension, because they feel the weight of his new fate. The lady asks, "So what have you decided?" Zero knows that his main goal still is to save Chibai. He must protect those who have become black stones, and at the same time not destroy anyone's lives. Part of him thinks that the best thing is to erase magic and free the spirits. If he had not met friends, most likely he would have completely weakened the magic of the whole world. He remembers from his previous life that people survive perfectly well even without magic. But then he looks around and suddenly realizes it is magic that makes this world beautiful. The existence of Chibai adds such color to this world that he does not want to erase. He clenches his fist, stuck in a huge RG of emotions. He sincerely admits he has not yet grasped that perfect answer. But when there is little time left, she hands him a staff that carries the power of all the great spirits. Their last stop is the Orphan Castle, which stands in the very heart of the continent. Only here can their desire become reality. The journey officially heads towards the climax, and the excitement is real. Zero finally gathers the last of the great spirits for his collection. Koya simply goes crazy because our guy actually managed to collect the full set. But although everything looked like real hard labor, Zero confirms that he met all 4 great bosses. But the celebration was suddenly cut short when a high-ranking spirit warned them, "Do not relax too much." Gray begins to ask real questions about the secret dungeon hidden beneath the royal castle. They say there is an altar down there so that one can speak directly with the great deity in the sky. Suddenly night arrives, and he looks as if he has just survived total annihilation. He drops to his knees to tell Amaris the worst possible news. It turns out the Spirit Liberation Army just rushed through the castle and captured everything. Zero demands details, and Kuya looks as if he is sweating bullets. Amaris is boiling with rage, convinced that Kuya knew about this raid from the very beginning. Zero intervenes and demands that Kuya stop shutting down and finally explain what is going on here. Koi tries to play the card, "I am doing this for the sake of peace." He does not care that the castle might disappear as long as the magical power is fixed. He is monitoring glitches in the world's mania and wants to reboot the system. Zero throws in his face, "You are actually preparing a bloody coup to replace the government." Kuya confesses, let the army destroy him as long as the mission is accomplished. But he understands that the time is completely unsuitable. They are not ready for the next stage. The secret ingredient of his plan is the so-called Black Stone of Magic. The plan was simple: use these stones as bait for monsters to attract their aggression to the castle. The girls were completely horrified. This plan is incredibly cold-blooded. Kuya insists that the recent surge of trash mobs near the capital was not just RNG bad luck. All this trouble is because of the stones secretly placed under the king's feet. These stones are like a beacon that turns every nearby monster into a fierce beast. Zero realizes stacking those stones in the capital means condemning oneself to death. This forces the king to send guards to the gates, and he himself remains open to a strike in the back. The knight silently confirms the minister and the knight captain have already made their move. Zero wonders how the minister manages that stone at all. They usually drain all the strength from a person. But it turns out the minister is a first-class researcher who found a clever loophole. Grace accidentally reveals that she has been holding one of the stones all this time, and completely without any negative effects. Koyo explains that she has a rare completed version in her hands that does not drain the user's mana. The maid anxiously asks what will happen to the monsters when the castle is gone. At first, Kuya intended to send the stones to God to dispel the monster's aggression. But Zero is not fully recharged, yet the castle will be completely looted. The girls realized how vile this whole scheme is and began to unleash a real verbal avalanche on Kuya. There is no more time for talk. The castle must be stormed before the end of the game comes. Zero summarizes, the source of all the lags in this world sits right in the capital itself. He clenches his fist, ready for the final battle with the boss. He understands, excessive pondering is for losers. It's time to get your hands dirty and act. Although the enemies have the home field advantage, our guy is absolutely confident he will win this clash. With a sly smile, the wildest Yankee in the world prepares to crush the coup with his courage alone. Zero, Koya, and the team stand on the edge of a literal terrain overhaul. Our guy is not just clearing the way, he is carving a giant canyon through the swamp, as if it were a regular terraforming mod. Amaris and Grace are simply stunned by the sheer power of the great spirits. It turned out that having powerful spirits of light and darkness on the team is like a cheat code. Amaris wastes no time ordering everyone to run back to the southern village. While they rush, Zero suddenly realizes his earth magic is like a loophole in the very laws of this world. He delights in his stats, while Kuya harshly mocks the exhausted knights for being too slow. Zero begins to piece together the puzzle and understands why the Spirit Liberation Army moved their deadlines forward. Koya has no answers, but he clearly feels the pressure. While the strongest Lily and Grace are not in the capital, the city's defense looks like a complete joke. Zero drops a bomb. The enemy probably now considers Koya a traitor. The goal is clear: the rebels want to destroy the kings and capture the sanctuary under the castle. Kuya tries to argue, but he is literally grabbed and dragged along. There is no time for argument. Amaris is in full sergeant mode, yelling at them to move their legs. Amid the chaos, Zero notices Lily. She looks a bit sad. She asks if he is really some great spirit, and our guy just shrugs as if it doesn't matter at all. He is actually indifferent to having become a chibai ghost after all. He already died once in a previous life. Lily gives him a sincere, warm smile, understanding that his heart is in the right place. Finally, they approach the nearest town as the sun begins to set. Even if they rush by carriage straight to the capital, the journey will take a whole day. Suddenly, a group of knights from Amari's fan club runs out. They rush to meet them to greet them. They are almost sobbing because they could not protect the king. It turns out the king is now barricading himself in his room, and Minister Gamas is committing complete treason. Amars instantly takes command and calls an urgent strategic meeting. In the capital, real chaos. Mad crowds of goblins are rampaging everywhere. To sneak elite units secretly with such a number of enemies, this is almost a suicide mission. Zero is tired of delays and shouts to everyone, "Be quiet and listen." Amaris feels that he is plotting something. He asks the soldiers if there is anyone among them who can use simple earth magic. His plan is a true speedrun strategy, to dig a huge tunnel directly into the underground temple. The room froze in a deathly silence as they digested what they heard and realized how crazy it sounded. Kuya starts laughing and says that this plan is sheer impossibility. He explains that even combining mana, they will exhaust it long before they reach the castle. Kuya considers his 112 contracts with spirits something extremely important, but in reality, he is still just a small fish. He strictly told Zero that his plan would not work. Zero had been in this world too briefly to make contracts. Grace looks worried, as if thinking whether this plan is doomed to fail from the very beginning. And here our guy decides to show off his gacha luck. It turns out he has as many as 354 contracts. A real ocean of chibai spirits appears, and this clearly proves that his power level is simply off the charts. The counter suddenly jumped to 357 in real time, and the soldiers just froze in shock. Grace silences the doubters, strictly demanding quiet from the noisy crowd. She defends Zero and tells everyone that although his face is scary, he is a good person. She convincingly explains that no one cares for the spirits like he does. While the Liberation Army treats spirits as minor enemies, Zero treats them like family. Grace, a little moved, admits that she just wants to help our guy win. Amara steps forward and stands up for her sister, relying on Zero with all her heart. Even the soldiers begin to turn to his side, remembering how he used to fill them with strength. Zero is still angry because everyone teased him about his face, but he doesn't stay angry for long. And seeing the girls smile and believe in him is worth all those efforts. Barely audible, he whispers "thank you," preparing for the mission. Amari's finally gives the final green light. Digging can begin. The large magical operation has officially been given the green light, and the team is preparing to tunnel their way to victory. Now the team is rushing to the capital through a huge network of tunnels. The girls are simply stunned. Zero managed to carve such a deep path in one go. Our guy immediately explained he only enhanced the soldiers' magic, not carrying all the hard work himself. Still, the colossal power of the Great Spirit is simply impossible to ignore. Finally, they arrive at the underground cave. They have to leave the vehicle and proceed on foot. But this place is just gigantic, and even the most professional villain hunters are shocked by the scale of the chasm beneath the city. The stakes are high. The enemy has probably already entrenched themselves in the most important places, such as the altar. Zero decides to move in a small group to remain unnoticed, while the soldiers focus all their attention on saving the king. They headed straight to the very center, to where the altar should be. Of course, it wouldn't be a real dungeon run if we didn't encounter a few minor enemies along the way. Instead of some super smart strategy, the girls decide only a frontal attack. Zero throws himself into the attack without hesitation, leading the assault right into the enemy's face. Enemy mages unleashed a barrage of spells, but Lily rushed forward, raised her shield, and drew Aggro's attention onto herself. A powerful explosion rolled through the tunnel, and the eccentric figures in cloaks are sure they have truly finished off the prey. They are already celebrating, reminding each other the spirits must remain alive for their twisted plans. But the smoke clears and an ice wall appears without a single scratch. Lily just smirks, says it's easy, and then prepares to freeze them all. The mages desperately bombard the barrier with fire spells to melt it, but it literally doesn't budge. Zero laughs and waves off, explaining that the ice is saturated with his magic, so it is almost impossible to destroy. The enemies break out in cold sweat and call him a real demon, while the group simply passes by them. Grace is already burning with desire to go into battle, but Kuya insists that he will handle the remaining waves himself. Zero sternly warns him, if he continues to show off, he might run out of mana. Kuya simply says that he will endure all the grind with pure courage, because he finally feels that he can protect everyone. Zero fell for the heroic act, and tells him that his selflessness makes him a disgusting person. Suddenly the group froze in place, because the path before them suddenly opened. Finally they find it a huge altar connected to the gods. But before they could celebrate reaching the goal, someone shouted, "Wait." From the shadows steps the Prime Minister, and he looks like a real monster, the final boss. He mocks their ignorance and calls Kuya to start the ritual. The entire squad was stunned by what they saw. They were completely paralyzed. Kuya just coldly looks at them and admits that from the very beginning he worked for the villains. The girls can't even comprehend the betrayal, praying to the heavens that it is just a sick joke. But Kuya just waved it off and, saying, "Thank you for everything that happened before this," went to the altar. Zero only narrowed his eyes, as if ready to erase the traitor right on the spot. The old man with the monocle insistently demands that Kuya give him more magic to take care of the group. He admits with a self-satisfied smile that he was the rat behind the quest about the lizard man all along. Amaris does not listen to his excuses and prepares to finish off this clown once and for all. Suddenly a huge magical circle appeared, pulsing with a dark and terrible aura. Lily instantly recognized this forbidden ritual is a demon summoning. From the portal emerges this burly monster, true nightmare. Without losing a second, the beast releases a wave of hellfire that threatens to burn the entire room. Lily barely manages to unfold an ice shield so the group is not wiped out. When fire and ice collide, a chaotic storm of steam and pressure erupts. The villain laughs maliciously, ordering the group to burn to ashes while his monster rages. Even with Zero's vast reserve of magic, Lily warns, the ice will not withstand such heat. The barrier begins to crack and melt under the relentless heat of the demonic flame. Suddenly, Princess Grace steps forward. She is tired of feeling like a burden in every battle. She discovers that she can also use fire magic, becoming the first person Zero truly recognized. The scoundrel with the monocle mockingly ridicules her, calling her just a useless princess. Zero ignores the mockery and decides to fill her with wild, raw magical energy. Grace grabs the energy like a true champion and prepares to take a huge risk. She tightly grips her staff, pure determination in her eyes. Again emerging from behind the icy wall that protected her, she walks straight into the very hell. The old man shouts for her to turn to ashes. Grace focuses, understanding. To tame this flame, she needs to take the spirits under control. Zero looks at his partner with instant, unconditional trust. Grace stands as if demonstrating her strength completely unharmed, while the fire swirls around her. She not only survived the attack, she successfully intercepted the demon's very fire. She defiantly tells the villain, "Don't look down on me, I have the great dark spirit on my side." In panic, the old man begs Koya to give him more power to save his plan, which is about to fail. Koya just coldly glanced at him. It was clear his magic was completely exhausted. He admits it took quite some time to drain the old man's resources while he hesitated. He pulls out Zero's stolen magic, stones proving he is a true loot goblin. The old man screams about betrayal, and Kuya is completely indifferent. He explains that he only does what he wants, regardless of the consequences. Before that madman could finish his tirade, Zero knocked him out with a single punch to the face. Other traitors have already been driven and tied up behind. Amari's looks with a stone face and understands that the immediate threat has passed. Grace shines with impatience, waiting for Zero to praise her brilliant move. Finally, he whispered to her, "Well done," and she beamed with joy. Of course, she immediately explodes, complaining that he was the one who should have proposed to her. But the victory celebration is suddenly interrupted by a piercing, painful scream. Amari's rushes forward as Koyu is suddenly knocked down by an unknown force. Koyu was blown into the air, coughing up blood, and the air suddenly became oppressively heavy. Zero realizes that he has just encountered a monster of a completely different power level. Amara does not retreat, she becomes a shield, covering the wounded Koyu from the newcomer. The real boss Gaumis finally comes into the light, like an indomitable wall of steel. Gaumlis, the knight commander of the kingdom, comes into the light with a self-satisfied smile. Zero immediately tries to stabilize the wounded Koyu, using special medicine for his Chibai spirits. Our guy has no idea who this muscular idiot is, but he senses trouble from afar. Zero demands an explanation for why a high-ranking official betrayed his position. Homless insists he is doing it for the sake of peace, but in his own twisted way. He has a cunning plan to completely cut off the connection between humanity and the spirits. Zero cannot believe the audacity of this huge monster standing before him. The idea is simple: if people stop relying on magic, the spirits will finally stop fading. Gaumlis admits that he is actually a complete zero in magic and rose through the ranks only thanks to pure steel. He knows you can't touch the Prime Minister. He has several deals with the spirits. He dreams of a world ruled only by brute force, without any spirit interference. Zero simply calls him a damn gorilla and mocks his huge ego. Amaris loses his composure and sharply orders him to shut up immediately. Before she could rush forward, the commander sharply ordered her to check the ground beneath her feet. He covered the floor with black stones that attract the attention of all monsters in this zone. The entire room is like a ticking bomb about to explode. He knew well, without strategy, simply facing the Great Spirit one-on-two would not work. If they use magic, the stones will shatter into pieces, and the altar will collapse. He breaks the stone with one strike to show that he is not bluffing. Amaris orders everyone to retreat and not to take their eyes off Kuya. She decides to personally deal with this villain with her blade. She feels guilty for not stopping her mentor before things went this far. The clash ignites instantly as she rushes forward. Their blades collided with such force that the whole room trembled. It is a wildly fast exchange that would make even a pro gamer sweat. And Gaumlis is actually impressed by how much she has leveled up since their last meeting. Zero watches excitedly as she avoids every stone and fights with crazy precision. Her sisters understand that right now, she is fueled only by pure self-hatred and remorse. Two warriors have locked blades in a desperate test of pure strength. Amaris demands to know why he is acting so incredibly stupid. He says he is just cleaning up the mess that the royal family has ignored for years. He asked why her family is allowed to rule, but he is not. Amara yells at him, "Shut up," and puts all her strength into the next strike. Imagine she really gains the upper hand and demands his complete surrender. Gamos just smirks and tells her that she has really changed. Zero sees the trap and loudly shouts to her, "Be ready." Amaris realizes the mistake, only for a split second too late. Colossal explosion of energy, the censor was thrown back in complete shock. Gaumlis mocks her, as if she softened and didn't finish the job when she had the chance. He moves forward to erase her forever with one last strike. But Zero rushes forward and takes the blow himself. The guy is all sweaty, but he won't let her get hurt. He broke his bones again, but still stands his ground. Zero's expression became terribly cold when he looked at the commander. Gaumlis thinks he won because the group was cornered and broken. And he even dares to suggest that they start working together. Zero just looks at him and his eyes is pure murderous intent. Gaumlis does not back down, offers a deal that sounds like a complete trap. While the villain waits for an answer, our guy checks his team and makes sure Amaku is okay after those cursed stones drained her mana. He does not take risks, orders the group to immediately use Chiba's medicine to patch everyone up. Just after handing over the pipe for safekeeping, Zero sharply changed his mood. He stopped playing the polite one and told the group that he would now arrange a legendary beating for this old man. Gamaz just laughs, amazed that some rascal could do anything against an experienced commander. Zero is not scared at all, boasting that in the old world he was a true giant. He offers the old man a real old baptism, a challenge to an honest fistfight. Gumless takes the bait, confident that he has the advantage in hand-to-hand combat. Zero knows that he is much weaker compared to Amaku's magic, so he deliberately drags the fight into a close encounter to protect the black stones. Even Chibai cheers him on as he steps into the ring. Everything is at stake. If Gumless wins, the entire party must surrender. The commander bursts in like a truck and shouts that he will not regret any of his life choices. But Zero does not fight fair. He immediately launches a sneaky headbutt, and this completely caught Gumless by surprise. He definitely hits with the next move. It looks like this speedrun is already in his pocket. Gamos suddenly realizes Zero is not just a random guy, but a true street veteran. Zero just smiles ironically, admitting that he is not a knight and doesn't care about fighting fair. They start exchanging devastating blows, and the shockwaves make the girl literally sweat profusely. Gumless hits like a real gorilla, and Zero endures an incredible number of hits. Even when he is knocked down, Zero stubbornly does not give up on his goal. Despite the blood, Zero still smiles like a madman. Gamless is sure now he will deliver the final blow and end this fight right here. But Zero responds with another brutal headbutt, shouting at the gorilla not to look down on him. The blow was so strong that Gamas's head jerked back from the pain. Beaten, Zero stands and suddenly admits that all this time he was hiding something under his hoodie. Lily looks in horror. She feels like our guy is already on the edge. Turned out Zero used a sneaky trick. He shoved a stone axe under his clothes to take all those heavy blows himself. Lily is simply stunned that he is willing to carry such a heavy thing just for a tactical advantage. Gaumless is boiling with rage, and Zero just laughed and said that this is not his only surprise. He demands his pipe back, ready to end this farce. Zero reveals the real plan. He endured that beating just to keep Gaumless pinned in one place. While they were fighting, the Chibis were bustling around, collecting every blackstone in the area. Gamos suddenly realizes he was played like a Chibai stump, and right behind his back stands a huge pile of stones. Zero aimed his weapon and called Gaumless a muscular idiot one last time. When Gaumless shouted about injustice, Zero coldly reminded him, "You are a Yankee, not a hero." Zero lets release whacking Gaumless from the pipe without any delay. He started attacking him, listing one by one all the reasons why the commander deserves this thrashing. The rest of the team watches this bloody massacre, feeling both admiration and complete disgust due to the lack of dignity. I Gaumlas found myself tied to a post and looked completely erased. Zero waved off, telling everyone that in a real fight only the result matters. The threat was subdued, and finally the group stands before the ancient altar. They have finally reached the end of this exhausting journey. Even the Chibai versions of the team are confused and don't know what to do next. Next, Zero decides to offer his pipe, soaked with spirit, to the mechanism. He slammed his weapon on the ground, shouting, "Eat this as the last sacrifice." Suddenly, a blinding flash of light exploded throughout the room. This powerful burst of energy is the beginning of the end of their adventure. Zero opens his eyes. He looks completely shattered after the fight. He gets up, covered in dirt and blood after that dazzling light in the sanctuary. The group finds themselves in a huge ancient library, like in a secret DLC location. The girls were drenched to the bone, realizing that before them was the very legendary place where God lives. Kuya notices that Zero seems to recognize the layout of this place, and Zero admits it was here that he was first resurrected. Suddenly, a group of real thugs emerges before them, ready to challenge them. One of the mighty beings barked at them. Why did you strike the shrine instead of praying? The villain in the very center of the group just laughed and demanded to hear their final answer. Zero and Koya stand straight, ready to complete their main mission. Koya did not cheat, he simply told them that his answer was the same as the last time they spoke. Everyone turns their attention to Zero, waiting to hear his determination. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, this skinny guy with glasses appeared. The girls are completely confused and demand to know who this nerd is, but Zero calmly drops a bomb. He actually has it. God just smiles. Zero simply called him Four Eyes without even asking for permission. Tension rises as God begins to explain the ultimate reward. They are allowed to use their power only once to fundamentally change the world. They could have simply become rulers of the world or even wiped out all humanity if they considered us trash. Zero asks for confirmation, as if making sure that he essentially has a sandbox mode for reality. God asks if this journey finally gave him the answer he had been searching for so long. Zero begins his monologue, confessing that, coming from a world without magic, he knows, people can survive on their own. But having traveled this world, he realized, it is a true masterpiece and all mostly because of Chibai. He says that without magic, people would simply start building technology that destroys nature at a crazy speed. Chibai are truly special. They make contracts only with those who truly appeal to them. It's all about that mutual closeness and tenderness. Zero shows his brilliant move rotation. He aims to completely separate the spirit forest from the human world. As soon as a spirit exhausts its mana and turns into stone, it automatically teleports to the forest to recover there. Thus, even broken stones can stay close to friends while they heal. This is a system where people can still create magic, and at the same time, no spirit is forced to sign contracts they do not want. God himself confirms, the plan has not been nerfed, it can really be pulled off. Kuya is delighted with the idea, says it is simply fire, and agrees with the plan. He laughed. Zero's character never changes, he always puts spirits first. But God shows this plan has one huge flaw. If no one leads them, the spirits will not return from the forest by themselves. So Zero returns to God, ready to take on the sacrifice. The girls understand what he has in mind and shout for him to stay while he prepares to leave them behind. Zero drops a bombshell, he himself must stay behind. Grace instantly broke out in sweat and stubbornly refuses to believe that her character has been weakened so much that he is being kicked out of the party. The man in glasses sadly explains that the great spirits have their own affairs, so they have no choice. Koya admits, even with all his magic, he is not suitable for this mission. He reveals the truth. All this time, Zero single-handedly carried the team, spending his own mana reserves. Our guy is actually much more tired than he lets on. Even after endlessly spamming the most powerful spells, he still has a sly smile on his face. This man is a real monster. He builds walls and tunnels, and no soul breaks in the process. Grace is heartbroken. If he leaves, he will have to stay in the game alone forever. Lily tries to persuade him to stay and enjoy the world they just saved. But Zero is determined to cross to the other side. He knows that lonely, exhausting work awaits ahead. Look at his clothes, stained with blood, and you can immediately see the price this journey cost. He does it to repay the Chibis who saved him at first. He reaches out his hand one last time. He gently stroked Lily and Grace on the heads one last time, apologizing for the sudden departure. The girls cry so much that their tears would be enough to fill an entire bottle of mana potion. Zero turns to the boy with glasses and sternly says that next time he better have better explanations. He leaves his Chibai team under his care. Then he humiliates Koya, calls him a weakling, and orders Amaris to watch over him. Lily loses her composure, and Zero tells her that she is not usually this emotional. He sincerely thanks her for always guarding the group. Grace grabs Aggro and pulls him, saying she will not let him go. Zero just smiles, showing that he has changed precisely because of her. He gives her a final thank you. The emotion of the moment completely overwhelmed Grace. She calls him unfair for leaving like that. Zero laughed it off and thanked all the Chibis for being his friends until the end. He asked them to continue protecting the people of this world. Finally, he ordered the four-eyed one to press the switch. Right beneath him, a huge magical circle emerges. He is sucked into the portal, grumbling about traveling without any delay. His last scream echoes as he disappears from the server. But let's fast forward time by a year. Grace looks like a real bold beauty on the road again. After talking with the king, she decided to set out on a journey to truly get to know the world. She is determined to do everything she can, even when she feels weak. Meanwhile, Amaris is still squeezing all the juice out of Kuya. She is now a knight captain, and everyone can see they are basically flirting openly. Lily has grown up a bit too. All this time, two girls traveled together. Finally, they returned to the Forest of Spirits, to the place where it all began. Suddenly, a pack of trash goblins closed in around them. They had not a drop of magic left. They couldn't even summon a simple protective shield. Grace, Lily, and the world hung between escape and a fight doomed to defeat. Suddenly, a dazzling flash of light exploded from somewhere, instantly wiping out the entire group of goblins. Grace froze from the stunning power of the attack. Lily wondered who could have so much firepower. Through the clouds of smoke, a hand reaches out. Here is our guy Zero acting as if he never went anywhere. The girls look as if they just saw a ghost. Zero admits that he probably overdid it, a bit trying to return in speedrun mode. It seems he sent so many spirits to the other side that he tore the flow of magic in the world again. Now he will have to travel around the whole world to fix the mess he made. He looks at the girls and tells them that it's time to move. They are stunned. He wants them to go with him. He reminds them of the promise they made a year ago. Grace and Lily are completely devoted, ready to follow him forever. They promise to stay by his side. Zero smiles boldly, ready again to challenge the world together with his team. The journey continues, and once again the whole gang is together.